Piotr Hajdecki. I'm Senior Advisor at Business Finland, and I will be moderator of today's conference. I saw in the corridor that atmosphere is good, excellent, which will make my job easier. On behalf of the organizers and myself, I would like to welcome you to the Nordic conference, Decarbonizing of Transport. When I was invited to moderate this event, I asked the organizers what is the purpose of this event, and I was told that it's awareness building. And flying yesterday afternoon to Vilnius, I was thinking on the plane, what is my goal as moderator for this event? And I identified 3 goals. Goal number 1 is to create friendly environment for opinion sharing and discussions. Second, to deepen dialogue between the stakeholders. And the third is, hopefully, to generate some ideas, maybe solutions, or just inspirations that could be helpful in your everyday business practice or everyday operation. Yeah. Preparing to this conference today, I was thinking about key factors shaping the environment of green fuels, and I identified 4 drivers. Driver number 1 is, of course, climate pressure. So, and related obligations related to climate changes, like, for example, Paris Agreement or net zero target. Factor number 2 is geopolitical situation, which creates urgency to reduce use of fossil fuels. Number 3, affordability. So the question how to make it that green fuels will be affordable for the consumers. And question number 4, I would say availability factor, because for each feedstock for green fuels, there is also alternative use or alternative application. For example, food production. So how to arrange everything that production of green fuels will not negatively affect the other domains. And today we have great composition of the speakers. Because there will be representatives of government, I mean Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Communication and Transport. We will have representatives of business, both industry and transport operators. And we will have also representative of business organization. And I believe that it will help us to look at the issue at hand, at our today topic, from many different perspectives. I also count on you, the audience, that you will help me to make this event as productive as possible by asking your questions in Q&R sessions. But before we go to the first speech, I would like to name the organizers of today's conference. There are 4. Organizer number 1 is Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Lithuania. Thank you. Organizer number 2 is Finnish-Lithuanian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Organizer number 3 is Norwegian-Lithuanian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Organizer number 4 is Nordic Council of Ministers in Lithuania. Thank you. And the entire event is powered by Neste company. Thank you. So now I think we are ready for the speech number 1. Maybe I will say you one thing more, because we have slight changes in the agenda, because there are some other important events taking place in Lithuania. So Ambassador of Finland will be a little bit late, and her welcoming address will be rescheduled, and it will be delivered right after coffee break. But now we will have first speaker connecting with us remotely, and it will be Miss Anne-Marie Kemmel, State Secretary of Finland with her keynote speech. So, Madame Kemmel, the virtual floor is yours.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to speak to you at this unique event. From my part, I would like to welcome you all, even virtually. Climate leadership and the innovations we produce can allow Europe to achieve a multiple win-win situation. We can, at the same time, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, create new jobs, boost the economy and export, and increase our positive carbon handprint. In the best case, as I said, all these at the same time. The worldwide market for clean solution is huge, and it's growing, as we all know. Baltic countries are one of the most innovative areas in this field. There is a global demand for our expertise. Low carbon technology will be a significant competitive advantage for any enterprises in the future. In addition, preparation of sector-specific low-carbon roadmaps has shown that sustainable growth can be achieved by multiple means. Ladies and gentlemen, our government has defined new sources of sustainable growth, such as energy and material efficiency, carbon neutrality, ecological investments, clean tech, the circular economy, bioeconomy, and resource scarcity. All of these will foster growth trends in the Finnish industry, and at the same time, they provide building blocks for well-being. Innovations and trade do not fall in the state's competence, but for sure we can help companies by offering good conditions. One example is the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, which input over 50% to the green transition and digitalization. Finnish companies will benefit from our national plan also by having references for ecological investments. In Finland, we aim to be carbon neutral by 2035 and the first fossil-free advantaged economy. In 2019, the share of renewables in Finland was at 43%. Finland has banned goal for energy use as 2029, which means that we are investing in clean and renewable energy solution a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, the new geopolitical situation highlights the need of this development and has speeded up actions throughout Europe. So, European and Finnish energy policies also cover other matters that are not directly included in climate policy, such as security of energy supply, the functioning of the energy market, and the promoting of renewable energy sources and energy efficiency. We recently got a large package of green growth and circular economy action points from the Commission. It's important that we keep up the good coherence between the regulative and funding instrument requirements. It's the only way to keep the reporting and non-productive workload in companies at the reasonable level and remain cost competitiveness. We wish to underline that comprehensive policy approach which combines measures of industrial innovation and single market policies is needed to reach the targets of climate neutrality and at the same time to strengthen the future competitiveness of our businesses and ecosystems. Even before the Ukrainian crisis, the transport sector was undergoing significant changes. The key drivers include urbanization, emission reduction targets, innovations, and technological development in the sector, as well as companies' business opportunities in global markets. The cost of the fuel and electricity is setting up new issues to the competitiveness. So, we have two strong drivers: price and a green transition. In the transport sector, we have 4-year-long program started 2021. It aims to reform the transport sector and to promote export-driven growth in the sector through ecological, cost-effective and socially sustainable solutions. The toolbox consists of the wide variety of means: by digitalization, fossil-free fuels, and for all movement and transport, and various cross-sectoral innovative products and services. Ladies and gentlemen, no one can solve this problem alone. We need companies, public bodies, and institutions' input to curb the climate change and make people's lives better. Collaboration at the European level is now more important as the challenges are piling up too. We warmly welcome everyone to our common journey towards the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I remember from this presentation, it was about comprehensive policy measures and the importance of stakeholder dialogue. And I hope that we will touch these topics also in our panel discussions. But before we go to panel discussion, we will have another speaker connecting with us online. And it will be Nina Ekelund from Hvo Initiativet from Sweden. And the topic of her presentation will be how business and policy move together to limit global warming to 1.5 centigrades. So, Nina, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Probably. No one is saying anything, so I hope so. Very glad to meet you all digitally, and I wish I could be in beautiful Vilnius. So I'm sending this from Stockholm instead in Sweden. So I'm going to talk about a study we have done during 2021. And I will get it going through it together with you. But first, what is the Hvo Initiative? It's a business network. You can see the companies here. It's many big companies in Sweden. We have a strategy to show how business can contribute to the 1.5 degree target. We talk about profitability. We talk about climate transformation. All the companies in the network have committed to have net zero emissions by 2030. Our target to 2020 was reduced with 40%, and the companies outperformed it with reducing with 75% or 80%. So that's Hvo Initiative. And in 2018, we interviewed companies, big companies from the Nordic countries, and we did it 2021 as well. And in this study, you can see we have the business network CLC, Climate Leadership Coalition from Finland, and the Norwegian business network Shift and the Hvo Initiative. And this report and the study was financed by Nordic Council of Ministers. And I can see a difference between the study we did in 2018 and 2021. And I can see that climate was top 3, top 4 in 2018 for the CEOs. But when we talked about this question last year, it was top of the agenda. It was the most important question. So in this study, we interviewed big companies, and their CEOs. And the aggregated revenue for all these companies was 326 billion euros. And that's like 24% of the GDP of the Nordic region. So it's big. And we asked a lot of questions, and we were interviewing the CEOs. And we asked, because at that time we had the second IPCC report from the climate panel in UN, and we asked about the report, and it was really interesting to hear their concern, their grave concern about the IPCC report, and 39% of the CEOs found the IPCC report underscoring climate change as a big threat, and 61% of the CEOs found the report confirming of what they already knew, and that the report is a signal to speed up the transformation and the transition. And then we also asked companies if they find climate change as a threat or an enabler. And 95% of the companies, of the CEOs, perceive climate change as both a threat and an opportunity. And we also talked about if the companies, how they contribute to the 1.5 degree target. And 70% of the companies have their targets aligned with the 1.5 degree target. And several of the CEOs answered that they are continuously pushing their limits to increase the contribution of climate transformation. So what do they need to speed up and faster climate transition? So first, and that was mentioned by all, I could say, carbon pricing is the most important to fasten the climate transformation. And you can do it through taxes, carbon taxes, or EU ETS. So that was the most single important how to have a faster climate transformation. But also, of course, higher climate requirements in public procurement. And we found a big frustration from several of the CEOs having this fantastic innovation and ideas, and they don't want to have it in the drawer. They want to do something with it. And then they need public and private procurement and asking for higher climate targets and higher climate demands when they procure. So that is so important. And also binding and transparent methodology in companies' climate reporting. And I was surprised by that. Having working with these issues for around 30 years, I've heard sustainability officers talking about it's so important with reporting the climate. And suddenly I sit with the CEOs for the largest companies in the Nordics, and they say, we need companies to be transparent with the climate reporting annually. And why? Because a company, if they have the targets to be climate neutral or to reduce the climate impact, they need to see what's happening in the value chain. And there is other companies in the value chain. And that collaboration is so important. So for a company and for a company strategy, it's really, really important that other companies do their homework and put up targets and are transparent with their climate emissions and follow GHG protocol. And also phasing out fossil fuel subsidies or prohibiting fossil fuels was also something that was mentioned by several of the companies. And also business message to policymakers we asked about, and that was increase ambitions, and also speed is important in urgent times, and importance of predictability of the policies, and also a level playing field with competing countries. And almost all the companies are working with circularity. And we could also see there is a lack of recycled raw material there is not sufficient legislation, there is high costs, and the behavior we need to change. Instead of we need a change of behavior. And one example was one CEO mentioning especially the behavior and talking about may have to get used to have this as your mobile phone. When you leave it to an insurance company, maybe you shouldn't have a new one. Maybe you should just have one that is old and fixed. And also collaboration, and I will come back to collaboration. And we also talked about skills development for an increased productivity. And this list here in the PowerPoint is very short, so I would recommend you to see the full report on our webpage. But all the companies mention digitalization, AI, and sustainability, and new types of skills. So that was really, really important for the future. And also we were asked about promising innovative green technologies in the Nordics. And here you can see the list: wind power, offshore wind, carbon neutral steel, hydrogen, battery production, carbon and capture and storage, and also negative emissions, circularity, carbon neutral cement, biogas, Carbfix. And this Carbfix, you can look into the report and read about this exciting work they do in Iceland, for example. Measuring and reporting footprints are being done by all responding companies, and 33% of the CEOs have estimated that they have a positive climate impact on their products and services. And also, Nordic companies' message to other business leaders is that they wanted to discuss collaboration, partnership, and act, not talk. And collaboration, I would say, that's the 2020's most important and question when you see how the climate work will change. More collaboration and new types of collaboration. And also, if I conclude, there is a strong sense of urgency. We need to ramp up climate actions and act, not talk. That is so important. And I also want to mention from the Business Network Shift and CLC and the Haga Initiative, we are having something that we call the Call on Carbon. So if you Google it, you can sign up as a company to have tougher carbon pricing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina, for your presentation. Would you accept some questions from the audience?
I do.
Okay, excellent. So if any of you have a question, please raise your hand and Nina will answer. If you are connected online, you can send in the Slido the question. If there are no questions, don't worry, I have plan B. And I have prepared some questions by myself. So Nina, you mentioned importance of collaboration and partnership. Would you give any inspiring examples of such partnerships or collaboration?
Yes, for example, fossil-free steel in Sweden. We have the SSAB and LKAB and Vattenfall, the energy company. And that I would say to make fossil-free steel is a fantastic collaboration. And also another one in circular economy between Electrolux, as you probably know, doing vacuum cleaners, for example, and Stena Recycling, who have the raw material and old plastic that they do new of, and doing a vacuum cleaner that is totally 100% circular. And also we can see at the negative emission chain, having CCS or bio-CCS, there is a chain with new collaborations that is so exciting. All from Norway, and where you put down the carbon dioxide in the water, if you say so, and from the company. So, and you have several partners in between. So I would say also looking at the value chain and working with Scope 3, if you're familiar with that, I think we will see new constellations and new collaborations, and I think companies will try to find new forms of businesses in the value chain and businesses between companies that we haven't seen before.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? If not, so I will have second question to you, Nina. And my question is, as far as I remember, it was on slide number 10, you listed obstacles for circularity, right? And there are 5 obstacles you named. So could you formulate one recommendation to each obstacle?
Oh, if I remember them. We have the cost, I think carbon pricing and can help circularity. I think that is, and also CBAM and all these kind of things, that is really, really important. You forget to talk about this long-term systemic carbon pricing when you talk about circular economies. I would like to mention that. And also tracing, if you have material and you don't know what's in the material, you know what it's in the new virgin material, but you don't know what it is in the circular material. I think the new technologies that we have with artificial intelligence, that can help us to trace material. So we need to work with the universities and research to evolve or to get better tracing of the material, because it's sometimes mixed. And also sharing economy is something that really goes together with circular economy in that part. And also price and costs and, I don't remember them all in my head here. So you have to help me out. Or have another question.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, we have questions. First question from the audience, please.
I
Use
think
the mic.
So, hi Nina, I'm Anders from Neste. I had a question. How do we ensure that the companies can maintain focus on climate leadership and circularity when other issues right now, for example, are coming higher up on the political agenda? How do we keep the climate change in focus going forward as well? So, ambitions are not lowered, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a really good question. I wish I had a good answer. We just got the recent IPCC report showing that we really need to speed up. And sometimes we tend to only have one crisis in the head. And right now we had the crisis in Ukraine and in front of us, of course. But if we look behind that crisis, we know we need to take care of and do the climate transformation. And for companies, I would say, if you don't do this now and go on and work with the climate transformation and what you can do in your company, I would say it probably be lost train for your company. So start changing, put up the targets and do it, because we have to do it at the same time. We don't know how long this crisis will be, but we have to do it. And we can see, looking at what is profitable for a company, we can see the climate transformation is profitable. And normally when I'm out having speeches, I talk about profitability and what companies do. So we always connect it, profitability and climate reduction. That can see that companies that reduce their climate impact are more profitable. So don't just remind yourself on that and see on the profitable side. And for the politicians, I would say, you have a responsibility as a person, as a politician, to act on climate. Remember, that's your legacy and your responsibility. I've been a former politician and I've done my duty for 20 years. So I try to remind politicians, don't forget this. It's your legacy. It's your responsibility to your children and your grandchildren.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Any other question from the audience? If not, please join me in thanking Nina for her speech.
Thank you so much.
It was Nina Ekelund. Thank you very much. And I have one message for people that connected with us online. If you would like to participate in the discussions, even if you are far away, you have this opportunity. There is Slido application that you can find on your screen. So please put your question and I will see it here and ask to the speakers. And now we will have one more presentation by the company that powered the today event. It's Neste Group. The topic of the presentation is Sustainable Future Mobility with Renewable Fuels, and the presentation will be delivered by Mats Hultman, head of OEM partnership at Neste. Mats, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, great to be here. So, I'm Mats Hultman. I'm working at Innovation and R&D at Neste, where I'm responsible for partnerships with the vehicle industry. So, also working a bit on legislation part, around CO2 legislation and those topics also. First, very short about Neste, for those of you who don't know us that well. So we were founded in 1948 as a more traditional oil company and then transformed into focusing on renewable fuels or renewable solutions. So we're now the world's largest producer of renewable diesel and also sustainable aviation fuel made from waste and residues. We've been selected one of the most sustainable companies in the world, or on the top list for that several times, which we are very proud of. And our products then help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 10.9 million tons last year. Now that's quite a big number, but what does it mean in reality? So you could transform it, it equals the emissions of over 4 million cars. So basically taking the emissions of more than 4 million cars off the road with this type of products. And we have a quite big production and we plan to stay ahead. So we have production in Finland, Rotterdam and Singapore. And we're currently producing 3.2 million ton, but by next year we will be up to 4.5 million ton. But on top of this, since we made this slide, we actually made an announcement just a couple of weeks ago that we're entering also into a joint venture in the US. So this number will be 5.5 million tons by next year. So really a big increase in production here. Today we will focus on road transport, renewable road transport, where we have our product Neste My Renewable Diesel. It's also known as Hvo 100, and it reduces greenhouse gas emissions on average 90%. And I'll come back to later on what that means in reality, comparing a little bit different solutions. We also do renewable aviation fuel, or sustainable aviation fuel as it's also known. So most airlines are already using our products like Air Baltics, Finnair, Lufthansa, KLM and so on. So if you've been out flying lately, you probably have been flying with part of our product in the tank. And our latest area is renewable polymer and chemicals. So also helping the plastic industry to be more sustainable. Because currently there's only been this type of recycled materials that are sort of a second grade materials available. But with our process, we actually have materials that reach exactly the same performance as the fossil one. So you could use the existing tooling and just use our raw material and have plastic components which are fully renewable. But first, talking a little bit about the product, renewable diesel or Hvo 100, as it's called, it's very often confused or mixed up with biodiesel, which is also good for the environment, but it's another product. So this product is a chemical copy of fossil diesel, so you can use it in any diesel engine or generator or wherever. And as you can see on the picture, it burns cleaner, so less soot. It has no aromatics in it, which is great because those are cancerogenic, but otherwise it's a chemical copy. So really a good performance product, but what you can't see on the picture here is the greenhouse gas reduction, and that's actually the biggest aspect of this product. And you can use it from 0 to 100%, so you can have like a 10% mix or 50 or 100% mix. It doesn't matter, you can mix it anyway. Compared to biodiesel FAME, where you see typically you can go up to 7% unless you have a dedicated engine that can handle more, but this one works in all. So, as mentioned, can be used across the whole lineup here with everything from buses and agriculture and so on, and it is being used in that way today. Also, we have a good support from the vehicle industry, both from the truck, passenger cars and the non-road equipment, so they are supporting the use of this and have approved the usage. And many of these companies also, we heard a speech before about companies' decarbonization journeys and how they become more sustainable. So many of the companies use the products also internally in their logistics, and some of them even use it as a first fill. So when the vehicle leaves the production plant, it's already filled up with our product. So for example, Volvo is doing this, Valtra is doing this, and also Liebherr is doing this. So already when the product is delivered, it comes with renewable diesel inside the tank, which is great. Looking a bit how it's made, we heard this question here in the beginning about food for fuel discussion and so on. And I would say from our side, we have chosen to focus on waste and residues. So we make our product from different kind of waste and residues, like used cooking oil, animal fats, waste from the fish industry, and by that getting away a little bit from this food for fuel discussion. We right now have 92% share waste and residue, but by 2025 our target is to be at 100%. And all these products are sustainable produced, and the regulation sort of controls also the what reduction values we have for this. So we are of course wanting to use the best raw materials that gives the highest greenhouse gas reduction as possible here. But then talking a little bit about how does this type of renewable fuel or biofuel works, and I think this is a quite important topic that is good to understand. If we look on the right-hand side, we first have fossil fuel, so if you take oil out of the ground and you make diesel or gasoline, you burn it in an engine, in a truck or in a car, you add CO2 to the atmosphere. But if you then use a renewable fuel instead, you use organic material that have absorbed CO2 during its life, and then when you make fuel out of it and burn it, you release that CO2 back, so you're circulating CO2. So you could compare it to a tree that absorbs CO2 during its life, and then when it dies, it falls to the ground, and it rottens, and it emits that CO2 back. And this is the same for all type of renewable fuel. So not adding any new CO2 to the atmosphere, that is the key with renewable fuels. Looking at the availability, so we have over 600 stations now over the world, mainly in the Nordics and in Netherlands, but also here in the Baltic regions we have 25 stations, and this is growing all the time, so map is needing updates all the time. But these are just the public filling stations. Then we are active in 28 countries, so in many countries the fleet owners calls us and we go out and fill up their tanks. So we do a lot of more deliveries or sell the fuel in more places than just where you see these dots here. And we're also active in the US, in the California region, with this fuel. Then looking a little bit, what are the others doing? So Grenea released this report last year, which was very interesting. It was based on publicly announced projects, so basically investments that are on their way or already ongoing. And today totally it's a production of about 8 million tons HVO being produced. But already by 2025, production is expected to reach 30 million tons. And that will really increase availability. And what's good to see is also that the big oil companies like Shell, BP, Total, Eni, Repsol, and those guys are now understanding that they need to do business differently. So they're doing the journey now that we did 15, 20 years ago. They're now transforming and investing in this, and that will also help availability. But a question I often get is like, why are you doing this? We have electrification, it's coming, it's working. Why do we need renewable fuels? And to explain it, we prepared this graphics to make it a little bit easier to get the overview. So this area that you see on the screen here, that represents all the fossil oil being used in the world today. So over 4,500 million tons per year. And most of that is used for transport. So over 2,600 million tons is used for transport. And looking at electric vehicles, which are great, in 2020 we had around 10 million electric vehicles. And this is how much fossil oil they replaced. So a little bit more than half of a box here. So much more is needed. If we look on biofuels, as you can see, renewable fuels, they did a quite good job already in 2020. But still a lot of boxes need to be filled here. So if we look at the International Energy Agency prediction about how much electric vehicles we will have in 2040, it will grow quite a lot to around 600 million electric vehicles. And as you can see, it makes a big impact. It really replaces a lot of oil, but much more is needed. And we have looked at what role can renewable fuels play here. And we see that with the volume potential of waste and residues in different sectors, there's potential to do much, much more here. And often these type of solutions are discarded in new strategies and so on, and just saying that, okay, there's just a small amount of it, we can't grow it and so on. But we have used the World Energy Outlook and the McKinsey report on this, looking at how much waste is available. And these are really showing the potential here from different solutions like adding on lignocellulosics and solutions like that. But still, there's also room for other solutions in the middle. So we will need also hydrogen, e-fuels, and other solutions. And I think the key message is here that one solution will not solve everything. We need to realize that all these solutions will be needed if we are to meet the climate targets. And we need technology neutrality to reach there. And talking a bit about regulation then, I mean, the path we have chosen to attack this problem is regulation. And as we have heard, we need to reduce the emissions, and there are a lot of commitments. From Neste side, we have committed to a climate neutral production by 2035, which is a sort of a leading number within the refinery world. So we are investing also in our refineries with green electricity, green hydrogen, and the carbon capture there also. But what we can see on this picture is we need to do a lot here already in the beginning. And I see a little bit too much focus on how good everything will be in 10 or often 20 or 30 years. Then everything will be perfect. And forget to focus on what can we do here and now. So I think we need to look a little bit more about the available solutions we have here and now. And looking at the regulation that we have right now that is available, on the fuel side, there's a lot of regulation like the Renewable Energy Directive, Fuel Quality Directive, and so on. And these controls blending mandates, also set what raw materials are seen as sustainable, and so on. And these are quite good and really taking into place the role of renewable fuels. But on the vehicle side, if we look on the strict vehicle emission regulation, it's only focusing on tailpipe emissions. So only looking at what comes out of the tailpipe, but not caring about if the electricity came from coal power or wherever and so on. So here we see that the vehicle regulation is not recognizing the role of renewable fuels that well. So, as I mentioned, there's a big tank-to-wheel perspective, and we would like to see more well-to-wheel focus, and I think the climate would like to see that also, because the climate doesn't care only about what comes out of the tailpipe, it cares about the total emissions. So either going to a life cycle part or at least a well-to-wheel part. And the good thing is that companies are doing that. So if you ask Scania or Volvo how they calculate their emission, they do it in the life cycle way. And also when they look at the emission from their vehicles, they look at the well-to-wheel perspective. And also other big companies like IKEA and Coca-Cola, or basically all big companies. So that's good that they have adopted this way and looking at the total emissions. And if you do that, it starts to look quite interesting. So a lot of data on the sheet here, but I'll walk you through it. It's not that complex. On the left-hand side, we have a life cycle analysis of a passenger car. And this data is coming from Volkswagen combined with data from the European Commission. So the blue bars represent when you produce the vehicle. So you emit greenhouse gases when you produce the vehicles. And the left side is a normal diesel car. And the middle one is an electric car. And as you can see, when you produce the electric car, you emit a bit more greenhouse gases due to the battery production. And then the green bar is when you use the vehicle and you burn the fuel or you use the electricity in it. And as you can see, what type of electricity you use plays a big role here. So if you're in China, you might as well continue driving your diesel vehicle because it's not improving by driving your electric vehicle because most of the energy comes from coal power. US, actually not that good either. Europe, a little bit better. And then you see the expected Europe electricity mix in 2030 starting to look quite good. And then there's an example from Sweden running on more green electricity. But what if you take that diesel car and run it on HVO, renewable diesel instead? You see that actually you're achieving same or better or less emissions than an electric vehicle running on green electricity. So not saying that both will for sure be needed here, but both are good solutions if you power them with the right energy. The right chart then is for a truck, and a truck does much more mileage than a passenger car, so that's why the numbers looks a bit different. And this is based on a recent life cycle analysis from Scania. So here you see electric vehicle running on green electricity is a good thing, or the EU mix, and achieving basically the same type of values with a truck running on HVO 100 as the expected EU electricity mix. And we think that we can't afford to exclude good solutions like this in the future either. So. Then if we come to the cost part, what does it cost? So there was an interesting study made by Roland Berger in Germany about what is the cost to reduce 1 ton of CO2 emission in a passenger car and in a truck. And not so unexpectedly, I mean, if you can use existing infrastructure, existing vehicles, and just change the fuel, of course the cost is lower compared to if you have to invest in a completely new infrastructure. So cost to society actually looks quite good with this kind of drop-in solutions here. And that's what we're seeing also from fleet owners looking at different solutions and also what's available. We talked in the break here, I talked to some fleet owners in Sweden running on HVO, but also wanted to try out running on electric trucks. So they bought some, unfortunately quite expensive to buy them. And then they talked to the power company and say, hey, we want to charge this at our transport hub, and say, yeah, great that you're doing this. In 2030, we can help you with setting up the power to this location. So it's also about time here. It takes time for some of these solutions to do it. So to wrap up, I would say that we need smart regulation that is technology neutral. So we should focus on greenhouse gas reductions, not only on certain technologies. And renewable fuels can be scaled up significantly, as you have just seen here. And it's not a matter of either or. We have to accept that we will need multiple solutions in the future. And we need to work together on this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mats. Please stay with us
Yep.
because probably we will have some questions. Anyone from the audience? Okay, please go.
Hello. I have a question actually about SAF, if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I know one part of SAF is reused cooking oil. Is that palm oil also included?
In the used cooking oil? That's a good question. I'm not sure about if it can be a part of that also. Maybe one of my colleagues here in the room knows that better.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's all the used cooking oil. And I mean, it's a matter of what you do with it. It's existing, and it can't be used for that much more. Maybe you can make candles out of it and something like that. But it's collecting waste. It's seen as a waste and residue material. So we're following the classification for that. So
Thank you.
Okay, any other question? Okay, so I think this man was first.
It's a down-to-earth question for a consumer, regular one. What's the price driving eco diesel car each day? I mean, 1 liter.
yeah.
What's the cost?
It differs a bit country by country depending on tax situations and so on. So I would say somewhere between 5 to 40 cents on cost depending on where you are in the world and how the regulation looks in that specific country. More. So yeah, it is a more expensive product. It is. But you should also compare it to what is the cost of decarbonization compared to other solutions. And then you'll find like, yeah. Yeah. But yes, there is an on cost for this. And that's why we also would like to, encourage that there should be recognized that you're doing this also.
Okay, and the next question was there. Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. One of the things you mentioned was the different things that are included and can be included to create the diesel. And you mentioned the cooking oil and some other things. I was curious which ones are used most and what creates the biggest percentage during the creation process of these waste products. And do these differ country by country, the kind of formulas and the recipes?
Yeah, I would say it's more on a European level how it's classified, the different raw materials. So we're following the EU classifications for what type of greenhouse gas reduction we are getting. And you can say that we are in the business of selling greenhouse gas reduction, so we want to use the raw materials that gives the best greenhouse gas reduction. And we are right now at around 90% in average. So that is really good. And I would say how it's spread differs a little bit year by year, but used cooking oil is for sure one of the biggest one, and also from Europe here, animal fats is a quite big one also. I would say those are the major ones. But we're working on having also more type of raw materials being used, and also using lower and lower grade materials that can't be used for anything else to make sure that we take care of those type of materials.
We have one more question.
Okay, that's maybe some provocative question, but let's try to discuss. Do we understand correctly that today, driving electrical car, it's polluting more or less much more than driving the renewable diesel you produce? Because production of electricity is not that green as it should be.
Yeah, from a life cycle perspective, that is the case. That is correct. But I wouldn't say either. I mean, both are a good solution. And if you have an electric car, you should try to buy green electricity. I would encourage that, because then you're making a real difference. But I would say an electric car on green electricity or your diesel car running on renewable diesel, both are great options. But you should be mind of what you're actually putting in there. That is the key.
One more question. From Christmas period in Finland, you know that the big thing is Christmas ham, and everybody is eating Christmas ham during Christmas in Finland. And how much fat from that ham you are collecting? Do you know?
I don't know the exact numbers here, but it has been a reoccurring event that we've been having in Finland to collect that and make fuel out of it. So it's been actually a quite nice initiative. People are getting involved and seeing actually how their waste can be turned into fuel. So I think it's a great way of showing actually how easy you can turn waste into a good product that helps the climate. So.
Another question? Okay, so in the meantime, there is a question here, please.
Are you planning or doing? Are you producing or planning to produce this renewable diesel in Lithuania as well?
Not currently that I'm aware of. We're expanding our productions in Singapore and Rotterdam currently, and also making some new investments in Finland also, but not something that is publicly announced or anything else about future locations so far. We're selling it here, yes.
Yes, thank you. If the product is so good, what is the reason why it's only sold mostly in Nordics and Netherlands? Why it's not sold in other countries so much? What are the main reasons?
I would say the main reason is the regulatory framework in those countries, that they actually promote that usage. They see it as a part of how to decarbonize their road traffics and so on. So it's used both as a 100% component, but also as a blending component. I mean, if we look at Sweden, for example, they're right now at around 30% greenhouse gas reduction in the normal diesel and going to 66% greenhouse gas reduction in diesel. So they're really sort of using it as a key way to decarbonize. And that also helps with the pricing and everything else then if the tax system is adopted for it and so on. But we are growing to more and more countries all the time also. It's a matter of having enough production for all countries also, of course. So that's why we're almost doubling our available volumes also.
So just to reply to the question about the Christmas ham. So in 2020, 240,000 households participated in this campaign. And it resulted in 55 tons of waste fat turned into Neste renewable diesel.
That's good.
In the meantime, we received a question from online channel, but actually it's very similar to the question already asked. The question is how much renewable diesel price is higher than regular diesel? So it was the question. Or maybe it's more affordable for customers. So I think that this question has already been answered.
Yeah.
Or you have
you
want to add something?
I think we said that it's, I mean, there is an own cost and it differs a little bit country by country. But yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you. Hi, I have two questions actually, if you don't mind. So one question is, do you have any solutions for petrol cars, or maybe you're looking into, or maybe it's technically impossible? And question number two is, of course you're planning and you're doing your research, but are you not going to run out of the raw materials, meaning the used cooking oil, etc.?
Yeah, maybe I start with the last question. So you saw on the slide that Hvo production is expected to reach around 30 million tons in 2025, quite a big increase. And we see that the raw materials that are used today, the global availability is somewhere 40 to 50 million tons. That's why we're also working a lot within R&D to scale up other areas, like making fuel also from lignocellulosics, where the volume potential is 200 to 400 million tons. So we have projects in lignocellulosics, in algae, in municipal solid waste, hydrogen and e-fuels also. So that's how we sort of see when we hit the limit, we want to have more things coming after that. And for gasoline cars, good question. We actually just did a project with renewable gasoline as an R&D project. It worked quite well. We did some volumes on it. We even sold it at some fuel stations in Sweden for a couple of months just to try it out. And we're looking at if we should expand that or continue with it right now. Also there needs to be incentives or a market for it. It is a more expensive product. So there needs to be sort of a market for it and incentives there to do it. But also those were made from waste and residue, but we also see these e-fuels. When you combine green hydrogen and CO2, you can also make fuel out of that. And that's also potential for making gasoline out of that process.
Okay, any other questions? So maybe I will have two questions.
Okay.
Yes? So first is related to this feedstock for HVO production. From which countries you buy the feedstock for the production, if you know?
Yeah.
And maybe it creates any chances for Lithuanian business to supply wastes and residues.
Yeah, it's a good question. We source our raw materials globally, so it's basically coming from all over the world. And with the crisis we have today, talking about supply security, that is also a security that we can go for many different type of raw materials being produced all over the world. And actually, when Neste started moving from fossil to renewables, one thing was the sustainability part, but one part was also the independence that Neste, starting out in Finland, didn't want to be dependent on Russian oil, so wanted to make sure that we had more ways of making fuel than just buying that oil. So already 20 years ago or more, that was a topic already back then. So.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is because I saw that you have experience from many different markets, yeah? So the question is about your experience in commercializing HVO in other markets and what obstacles you faced in different markets in launching the fuel or in scaling up the sales. What were the obstacles in different markets?
I think it's a combination of questions. One is that there needs to be a sort of a regulatory framework that supports this type of initiatives, and also that the business is that companies are wanting to use this type of product, and we see that more and more, very positive. So I think those two together creates the market. But then also a lot of education is needed. As I said, our product often gets mixed up with biodiesel, which has some challenges. It clogs up filters, it grows in the tanks and creates a lot of challenges for the user. So sometimes we get the sort of comment, yeah, we already tried that and it didn't work. That will say, okay, then you tried something else. It's not this type of product. So education, framework, and also sort of working with the local businesses to understand sort of and create the awareness about the product, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question for us here. Here you go.
Thank you again. A question not for you, Mats, but for the audience. How many of you, before coming here, before listening to this presentation, knew about this renewable diesel? Could you raise your hands? Okay, so you are quite well educated in this area.
That's
Thank you.
much higher than average, I would say.
It's targeted audience. Yes, so I think we will continue this in the panel with you. So thank you very much for our speaker, Mats Hultman. Thank you very much. And now we have another slight change in the agenda, because in the meantime, Her Excellency Ambassador of Finland, Arja Makkonen, has joined us. She's here. So I kindly ask you to say a few words. Thank you.
Coffee break time? Sorry about that. I will be short. So, dear participants of this Nordic conference on decarbonizing transport sector, a very, very important thing. Dear organizers, dear Piotr, I heard that you have been performing well. That is good. Firstly, I would like to apologize for my late arrival today, because I was taking part in the opening ceremony of the new gas interconnection Poland-Lithuania. And that was a big event with very high-level representatives, so presidents of Poland, Latvia, of course Lithuania, many ministers and other distinguished participants. So this gas interconnection Poland-Lithuania will further integrate Lithuania, of course the Baltic area, and also Finnish gas markets to the main European gas markets. So it's a huge thing. And it is really a milestone at the moment when we are so much talking about energy security and energy independence. So this GIPL, as they call it, it's really something that has been achieved today, this week, and it starts operating. And this is a great example of regional cooperation. So I encourage also you to work regionally on these sustainability issues. And of course, without European Union, I think these projects wouldn't have been so easy to achieve, because there you get political support and, of course, money. So it is important. It has been a long project, I was told, many years, but over 500 kilometers. So it is a big deal. About this seminar. So I would like to thank the active Nordic Chambers of Commerce. Great work, of course. And also the company Neste, who has been powering this event. Thank you. An excellent presentation about this, where we are going to and what we have to do. And also, of course, Technopolis for the premises. So transport sector is under huge challenges, dramatic change, climate change, carbon emissions, urbanization, but then we have innovations, as we have heard. So in order to make best possible decisions, we have to look at the bigger picture. And not only vehicles, what we are using, or fuels, but also urban planning and transport infrastructure in general. So this requires a lot of cooperation, different levels, on different levels, and between different actors. And I think it's very important that we have this kind of events, because people from different areas, we can gather together and learn about each other's experiences. And for me, for example, energy is not the main thing I'm doing at the moment. It's more on the security side, of course, because of the situation in this eastern flank. But this is really important for all the citizens to know more about these issues. And of course, innovative transport sector plays a crucial role in reducing emissions, fighting climate change, and creating sustainable employment and business as well. Because of course, I think we are always talking about business as well. I would like to finish saying and quoting one phrase from today's commissioning. One of the speakers said that dream big and look beyond the borders. So I think that will apply also to all of us. And let's keep on working hard and successfully. Thank you. And now I think is coffee break. Is it or not?
No, actually, maybe there are some questions to you, so please stay with us. Do you have any questions to Madam Ambassador? If not, so there will be opportunity to ask a question in the coffee break. And now we will start the panel, but please join me thanking Ambassador for her speech. And now we will have a panel session, but before we start it, I would like to say something, update of the situation, yeah? Because as you know that now security issues, cooperation in energy field is very important for all states in the region, and probably that's the reason that the ministers will be not able to join us at the panel. As I got information, they stayed at the inauguration ceremony, so we will have smaller panel, 2 representatives of business. So I would like to invite to the stage 2 participants, Mats Hultman from Neste, please, and Kestutis Starkus from Orlen Lietuva. Okay, so we go straight to the questions. First question to you is, if we were to make SWOT analysis for decarbonizing of transport in Lithuania, so to identify strengths of the country, weaknesses, but also challenges and threats for this project or initiative, what would it be? Mats, please start.
Yeah, I think a good way would be to sort of benchmark.
Can you hear?
Okay, it's okay. Oh, yeah, a good thing would be to benchmark other countries, also see what has went well and what did not go so well. So myself living in Sweden, I've seen that this type of blending mandates to sort of, instead of just following, try to lead, can be an interesting way to set even higher targets than are set up by European Commission, but also creating a bit awareness and availability. So I think those type of solutions can be there. So because the threat is that people think it's too expensive and they don't want to do it and so on. So I think there needs to be some sort of carrot in there also. If you're sustainable, either if it's that you're using green electricity or running on renewable diesel, there should be some incentive in there also.
I see. Thank you very much. What's about your point, Kestutis?
First of all, hi. Nice to be here. It's not a big surprise actually that we're just the 2 of us here discussing. I actually quite expected that. But well, that's a good question, and it's a broad question. It's really hard to answer it, shortly. I think it all starts from broader European Union policy, because it's essentially, well, maybe apart from Sweden, probably Finland, it's all of the other member states, they really follow European lead. It's not the countries that lead, Sweden and Finland maybe are, but essentially we in Lithuania here try to follow what the Europe asks. And it's not uncommon to hear saying that no one needs biofuels, but because Europe asks, that's why we do it. Well, we at least in Orlen Lietuva don't think so, because then I think that we believe that having such a refinery and refining capacity in Lithuania is really actually a strength to decarbonize. Because you can refine either fossil fuels or biomass or waste and residues. You can use, you can use the same infrastructure to produce low or zero or even, negative carbon footprint fuels. Of course, depending on how you calculate it. That was a very good point mentioned by Mats, because, for example, we as fuel suppliers, we do have our own targets and goals, and also there are corporate targets. Most of international companies, they try to achieve zero carbon on various years, and that also sometimes include these scope 3 emissions, so to speak, that from the fuels that we produce, they do not emit as well. But for fuels, according to current legislation, it's impossible, because for a vehicle, even if it uses 100%
for example, biomass or even waste. It was produced using carbon capture and storage, so it, based on life cycle analysis, it's even negative. It would still have almost the same, carbon footprint as pure diesel, pure fossil diesel. I think that's nonsense, and that's creates different kinds and even negating each other incentives. So vehicle makers, they want to move away from internal combustion engines because it's according to Fit for 55 package, year 2035 is a death sentence. But for fuel suppliers, we know that we can invest and we can produce. Neste has done that for decades, and kudos to them. But it's still possible, and that was shown, and I think we all agree that infrastructure exists. Feedstocks exist as well. So it's also, same for the whole world and Lithuania as well. Feedstocks exist. But one thing which probably should be mentioned, that availability, physical availability globally, it's not the same as eligibility, because that depends on the regulator. And what the regulator does, they probably skip the SWOT analysis test before they create the ambitions, because they do not really analyze availability of feedstocks. They raise the ambitions, it's always a decade in front, so that you don't look at problems at the current stage. You always look at the ambition 10 years before you. And with eligibility, Europe and Lithuania especially, we have some very purist, so to speak, philosophy towards feedstock lists. It has to be very pure. If it's a waste, it has to be a waste. No residues are allowed. And you have a problem because you have a huge ambition, but you have very scarce tool list to achieve that. So when we speak about availability, so Mats mentioned both probably numbers. Around 700 million of total availability, probably that's lipids, I think, that you mentioned. I mean, fatty oil, so to speak. That's physical availability, but eligible, it's way less. It's way less. And how can that, be increased? I think the regulator should look at what is being, done already. So, for example, if you look at, am I talking too long already? Sorry, just wanted to make that point when Mats was showing these numbers, because you do see the difference. It's like 20 times availability of 30, 40 million of what is available for Hvo production, 700 million of what is probably available physically. But to reach that, 700 million available and eligible as well, so I think it's European level. Policy should be that when you look at food and feedstock crops, so to speak, this first generation, which is limited, and it's even, I think it will be, limited even more on separate member states because of the war and probably, actualization once again of this food versus energy debate, is that in that definition, it is a clear list of what is exempt, what is not considered feed and food crops. So these are all residues and also intermediate crops, cover crops. So these should be probably, incentivized. And these could be grown in areas, I don't know, Africa, for example. Okay. So you could increase that in areas which are not really used for some, diverse, biologically diverse, areas. You could turn those into, possible feedstock growth areas.
Okay, we will continue this topic a little bit later, okay? But I would like to go back also to this what Mats started about this harmonization of regulation, yeah? And I know that you have experience again from different markets, so you know how it looks like in different markets. And the question is, what would be synergies or advantages of harmonizing the regulation in the Baltic states?
Yeah, maybe starting out with also to what you said here about the EU. I mean, the regulation mainly comes from the European Commission, and that's where it starts. And we're working a lot with them also to influence and to promote technology neutrality. And when we hear things like banning the combustion engine, it's actually it's not good for future investments and so on. So we would like that we are looking into and so on. Of course, we would like to see more technology neutrality and more openness to that, because I think, as I said, we will need all these solutions. Harmonization, I would say harmonization is good, but also stability, so long-term commitments, not changing the sort of regulation and so on by every election or every year almost. I think that helps also a lot with making new investments for us and making more fuel available to the market, and also for new players to come in and have more local production and so on. So I would say long-term commitments is really key here. And coming back to what's being done in the EU there, I read an interesting debate article some time ago here in the Times that there was a guy making the comparison to when we had the crisis with the corona crisis. He said, when that crisis hit us, we came together, industry and politics, and sat down together and say, how can we solve this crisis together? And basically the politicians asked the industry, what do you need to solve this? And in a record time, we had the vaccine. Now we have also the climate crisis, or we have had it for some time. And here it's more a matter of politicians, or I would say from EU, saying that this is the solution you should go for. So you should go for electrification and fuel cells. That is the solution. Please develop it. And instead, I strongly believe that the focus should be to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and set up framework around that. So that is what we would like to see. More framework connected to how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and not pick certain technologies, because no one knows which will be the winner at the end. And as we said, there won't be a single solution that solves everything. So that is something we also strongly believe in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Would you like to add something to this?
So I totally agree with technological neutrality. That's well, essentially absent from what European policies are, suggesting. Looking especially at the death of, internal combustion engine, you can really say that it's not neutral technologically. But talking about harmonization in the Baltics, I think first of all you have to look at how the European policy framework looks like. And the Fit for 55 package, at least with the RED III proposal, it goes towards a good direction because it gives you a clear path. All of the mandates in each country should be GHG based, greenhouse gas emission based, not volumetric, non-mandates, non-energy. It should be GHG, because that changes them dramatically. How you which feedstocks are more popular, or which kinds of biofuels are more popular in that jurisdiction. So that would be a correct path, on Europe level, to have, less flexibility, so to speak. So you have clearer ambitions on European level, and leaving certain leeway for member states, because each member state, well, Europe is quite vast, and it changed, it's different in its car fleets, it's different in its climate, which is essential, it's different in how much of local feedstock is available. So there are certain differences which should not be ignored, because you cannot reach a compromise when discussing this document. So I think, well, the Baltic states, they are not that different climate-wise, but there are certain differences in traditions. And I would say one is very fresh topic, which is very well reflects certain differences in how societies and politicians perceive renewable energy. So one would be Lithuania, which is quite, I would say, well, not probably protective, but very supportive of its local biofuel producers and feedstock providers, farmers. And then there's Latvia, which is very different. So just a few days ago, there was a political decision made in Latvia that first generation, or at least, well, in general, biofuel blending will become voluntary in Latvia. What that means, voluntary. So it is left for the businesses to make the decision. And here is where, here you look at the differences in that country. What's more important to drive us, a vehicle which is, better performance on GHG basis, or a cheaper fuel? Because biofuel is more expensive, of course. So, and here in Lithuania, we have very strict biofuel blending obligations, very strict ambitions. But you would ask, why are there's such a difference in two neighboring countries with very similar, climate conditions? Yeah. And I think European Commission did the work here, because it sent a very strange but clear signal in a very strange document that was a communication regarding food security, which was released like a month ago. And in like 15 pages of a document, there was one paragraph which said, European Commission supports efforts by member states to reduce or abolish mandates of biofuel blending if these biofuels would, create some sort of competition with food supplies.
I see. Thank you. You both mentioned regulations in your interventions. Yeah, so I would have a question: what legislative incentives or regulations or law amendments could be introduced in Lithuania to foster this move towards decarbonizing of transport?
Yeah, I would say it starts with target setting. So first of all, you need to have a target. Basically, what type of emissions would you like to see from your road transports? And then looking at those targets, how do we execute them? And then there's different ways of doing that. You can go with blending mandates, so basically blending biofuels into the mix, or you can promote more 100% usage, and also in combination with charging stations and other solutions also. So basically that, but when it comes to pure regulation, then it also comes down to like what taxes are there on different solutions and things like that also. So.
Mm-hmm. Any points from you, Kęstutis?
I think you were allowed to ask this question because vice ministers were not present. Because by answering, we would be straightly lobbying. But I would say that ambitions are clear in Lithuania, and they are very ambitious. But there are certain elements which could, of course, increase and give more tools. Increase, I mean, the incentives. So one thing is, of course, tax, because by answering to the question from the audience, you correctly put it. So how much does it cost? How much more does it does cost more? But by how much? It can vary like multiple times. And to negate that, price factor, to make it at least the same price as, fossil fuel, you have tax incentives. And I think the correct approach would be, once again, on European level, because taxes, these are regional. Excise duties, because it's a very liquid fuel. It's not only, liquid in physical state, but it's also a very liquid market. And it can be sold everywhere. So you have to look at excise duty tax, excise taxes everywhere. And I think the proposal from European Commission, once again, proposed by, after 10 years of, after the initial proposal, is to clearly, introduce into energy taxation directive the CO2 factor, the emission factor. So that would, change the taxation for fossil, for, first generation biofuels, residues, waste, and electricity, and going forward. That would really change, because that, internalizes the externalities. So you calculate the CO2 price, and you make sense of a regulated market, because biofuels on a pure market, they have no chance. You need regulations to clearly, create these market conditions for them to be popular.
Okay, thank you. And going back to the point you have raised before, so once I heard that in Lithuania there is so Lithuanian paradox that on the one hand there are very ambitious goals, yeah, but on the other hand Lithuania adopt restrictive measures, like for example restricting feedstock pool or capping non-food feedstock. And the question to you, what would be effects of liberalization of these rules or more flexibility, how it would affect the path towards decarbonization of transport?
Yeah, I mean, when you start restricting certain type of raw materials or feedstocks, you also restrict availability. It can also lead to higher prices and so on. So I think the easy answer is restricts availability and can lead to higher prices also. So I would say that are the main challenges there.
Okay, thank you.
Adding to that, yes, of course, it does, create also for Lithuania, in this case, it sort of creates a regulatory island inside a very fragmented already European market, but which is actually, it works on certain principles. And GHG calculation rule, there's one principle, and essentially how you classify certain feedstocks is also something which is more or less universal. And suppliers, the largest suppliers for which we as a fuel supplier of a final product, because we are not currently producing enough of biofuels our own, so we have to procure biofuel from external sources. We are not, pickers and choosers here. It's a deficit market. You get whatever is available. And for Lithuania, for such a small market, to have its own set of rules and to even shorten the list of available feedstocks, well, it really creates a problem because these targets are ambitious. They are more ambitious than European level, but the list of available tools is shorter. So we have, a problem. If European Union is, based on a principle that, internal market, it creates, liquid flows, and it's all much better if the market is large. Here we have a certain national market, regulatory market. So, for example, Neste would have to specifically certify that same product which they sell everywhere else on one basis. For Lithuania, they would have to reclassify it and sell it on way lesser price, I would assume, because at least according to Lithuanian legislation, they would lose GHG savings, they would fall under first generation cap, for example, if you're talking about that specific feedstock, which is PFAD. And the question follows, do we as a buyer have the option of using that fuel anymore? Probably not, because it's not going to be available for Lithuanian market because it's just too small. It's a global market.
Okay. And one more question that will be about dialogue with stakeholders here in Lithuania. I'm a lecturer at Warsaw School of Economics, and the program is economic diplomacy, and we do stakeholders map, we learn how to manage it, and the students are professionals, both from corporate world and from diplomacy, and it's usually the most interesting element of our classes, this dialogue with the stakeholders. Yeah, so my question to you is how this ideal form of dialogue could look like, or the platform for dialogue between the business and the legislator or lawmaker could look like. Any ideas? Maybe Kęstutis will start.
Well, from my experience regarding these biofuel-related issues, because RED II directive had to be transposed recently, so it was a very intense work. And I would say that Lithuanian institutions were very good at engaging all the stakeholders, and that's an absolute compliment. And I have no other way to put it. It's really good. I think the end result, to my understanding, well, maybe I'm interested in certain position, but it doesn't always have to be a compromise, a mid-ground, because there are certain rules, and I mean European Union legislation, which you just have to follow. And just the fact that certain stakeholders claim something as their existential need, it doesn't make them right. So there are certain things where you don't compromise. And by creating a very specific legislative and regulatory framework in Lithuania, you lose overall. It's not a compromise. Everyone loses. So I would say that engagement, it should always be as it is, and I think it's exemplary in Lithuania, actually. I would really commend our institutions, previous government, current government, same, but the end result, it really is, there has to be some political will probably to just listen to everyone, and then you make a decision. It doesn't have to really reflect everything.
Do you think that there is some missed value because of this, that not voices of all stakeholders are integrated into the final solution?
I think you lose a lot of time, because when the aim is to make everyone happy, then compromise is really about the art of making everyone equally unhappy. That's my understanding. So when you try to make everyone happy, you lose a lot of time. And time lost here is absolutely key, because it's a regulatory market, and you have to create stable market conditions to incentivize investments, because these are, for example, investments into equipment, to building and refining capacities. It takes time. You have to make a decision for a decade. And it's not only Lithuanian problem; it's European problem. We have mid-2022, we just recently adopted, by we I mean Europe in general, framework for 2030, which is being changed right now, period for 2030. In 2 years' time, max, after this Fit for 55 is adopted probably, discussions regarding period for 2040 will start. So just, as an investor, where do you find the time where, okay, now it's clear, I have like 10 years to invest, to recoup, and, to move forward towards, further steps. There's just no stability, absolutely. And in Lithuania, for example, with these, and not Lithuania, Latvia, other markets, with, national legislative initiatives, you even increase this fragmentation. So you sort of think that you understand what the European pathway is, but when you get, legislative proposals which are completely opposite. So I think losing time is the main issue.
What is your point, Mats? Thank you very much, Kęstutis.
I think this type of events also where industry and politics meet together is really important. And I'm also impressed to see what much of the industry is doing. Like we heard in the presentation here also, how many CEOs are committed to climate. And I know we have, for example, Scania and Volvo here today, and looking at what they're doing, like when they're buying components from here, they also want to make sure that they transport those components in a sustainable way, and they're looking for solutions and requiring solutions for that. And I think those type of discussions coming together and understanding what targets they have set, which are really ambitious, and seeing how those can be met together and working on meeting those targets together, I think is a good way forward.
Thank you very much. We have many questions from online channels, so maybe we will go to them. First question to the panel it's quite general, but let's try to answer it. So there is always alarm bells from climate organizations that the world will go under in the next 10 years. Will new IPCC alarms have any impact on the public? So actually I think that you are not the addressee of this question. So unless you want to answer to it.
Maybe just to add to what, so that it wouldn't look at just Neste has, decarbonization targets, Orlen Lietuva, here our Lithuanian refinery, as well as Orlen Group in general, we're also, aiming towards net zero and, intermediate targets by 2030. But it has to be said that all fuel suppliers, all refiners, they are trying to maximize value creation with currently available means to finance the next step, to transform to to times when no liquid or just liquid fuels which are zero or minus GHG emissions are being produced. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
And I think we had a good comment also from previous presentations here, but there is a challenge to focus at more than one crisis at a time, and I think we're really experienced that right now. That is challenging for the climate debate right now.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question or subject is very interesting. So the question is, biodiesel versus hydrogen. Both green solutions are on ongoing projects. Hydrogen seems to have a more bright future. Do you agree or not, and why? Mats, please start.
Yeah, first of all, we're back to the confusion of biodiesel and renewable diesel, but okay, biofuels, we could say, versus hydrogen. As I said, it's not either or. We will need both of these solutions, and they are good for certain applications and certain driving conditions. So I don't see that there will be a specific winner here. And as I said, we at Neste, will be producing green hydrogen as one part of it, but we will continue to produce also renewable diesel HVO also. So we see the future will need both solutions.
Okay, thank you.
I agree absolutely, but the question is how far that future is. When does come the time when hydrogen is so cheap that you can, I would, in jargon, waste it on moving a vehicle. It's essentially extremely good, and Is it on? Yeah.
Yes.
It's just an extremely good and valuable chemical component, which at least currently to essentially use it for transport when you have electricity, when you have fuels. It doesn't really make sense, because for hydrogen to become a good option for transport, you really need at least a few things. One is that total abundance of electricity, green electricity, and very cheap electricity. A lot of electrolyzers everywhere, too much of them, so that you don't know what to do with all that wind and solar or whatever, so that let's make hydrogen. Okay. But I think it's in the future. But one thing with biofuels and biodiesel, I think, which is more pressing question right now, and Neste is in probably the best position to answer to it, is road transport and sustainable aviation fuels. Because HVO is also a very good solution currently properly. 95% of all SAF is being produced on the same, technology. Will there be any feedstocks, waste and residues used for HVO left for road transport? That is the question. Because aviation is, it's a market which is really tolerant for price increases, I would say, much more so than road transport. So I would say that hydrogen is the future, of course, but the other issue is, will there be enough of quality biofuels on good waste and residue-based feedstocks for road transport and not aviation?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe please. I can just comment shortly on that. It's a good question that we often get also, like, good that you're doing this, just put it to aviation. The slide I showed with all the boxes there before, we have a version also, I didn't bring it today, but where we show how much fuel is used by aviation, and it's actually quite small. It's only some 5-6 boxes there. So we could actually, if we utilize all these waste and residues, we can easily fill up aviation and still do a lot for road traffic. And just the global discussion of aviation fuel right now is to start blending 2%. So, I mean, that's not that much. So I think, yeah, there is room to decarbonize all of aviation and still have plenty for road traffic if the regulation is supporting it.
I see that hydrogen is hot topic here in Lithuania because we have next question related to hydrogen, and the question is, do you think that one solution to liberate hydrogen from nitrate will be put in place? It will be the energy of the future, including heavy vehicles, and as a consequence, biodiesel will not be any longer subject of discussion. What is your point?
I think we both answered it already, that it's will not be one solution, and hydrogen comes with some challenges also, that there's a big part of the industry that needs green hydrogen that will fight for that also. And we heard about green steel in Sweden. I mean, that's it's a great initiative, but it's also consuming a great amount of green hydrogen. So, and I think we'll see that from more industries also. So there will for sure be need for more solutions, and there will not be a single winner here, or like, we have to accept that there will be more solutions.
I would say that it's also important to distinguish, talking about hydrogen and green hydrogen in transport, between hydrogen uses in pure form for fuel cell vehicles and green hydrogen used as a component for production of conventional fuels. So according to legislation, European legislation at least, so when you're producing diesel, gasoline, and if you use, because you have to use hydrogen for these purposes, if it's green hydrogen, then part of that can be considered as hydrogen supply to transport sector. So this way, for example, our company, we are one of the larger hydrogen producers currently in Lithuania. We use it for our refining purposes. By decarbonizing and greening our own hydrogen capacities, we will increase the part of green hydrogen used in Lithuanian transport sector, and that will have effect straight away. Once we connect the electrolyzers, it's straight away. Of course, it depends on European Commission to adopt delegated acts and to clearly put out rules. How do you calculate that? But it's at least my personal understanding is that green hydrogen in this form as a component for production of other fuels, it's right now, it's not the future. But in a pure form, it will take time.
Okay, thank you. And now it will be more dynamic. It's the message for the audience, and you will have 60 seconds for answering each question, because we are approaching the end of our panel, and we have to systemize what we were talking about. Okay, so the question in 60 seconds, and the question is about transposition of EU law to Lithuanian domestic law. Yeah, if it would be direct transposition without any modifications, what would be benefit? Maybe please present your position on the transposition of EU law to domestic law in Lithuania, and what would be pros and cons of transposition of EU directive straightly to the domestic law. Please, Kęstutis.
There are, two things important. So, EU, renewable energy, and for fuel quality are directives. So it gives certain leeway for countries to, pick and choose in certain aspects. But there are certain rules which are they're essentially like regulation. They are worded very technically and very specifically, and you do not really, have any, discretion to change something. So that's probably where my answer lays. So these rules, which are very specific, very technical, and they are paramount to, certain, minimum level of regulatory, harmonization on European level, so that, certain transnational, actors could play on certain set of rules, for example, GHG calculation rules. These are very technical, it's very specific, and it's very clear. So with these rules, you do not play. With other targets, with all the political, when the directive clearly gives you, you can choose this, another way or that way. The essential is that to reach the target. Then you can discuss. But there are certain things which should not be, played with. And we think that it's that's where you waste most of your time, when you start discussions on questions which do not need to be discussed. It has been done on the European level already.
Okay, thank you. Mats, your point?
Yeah, I think I would like to echo what you said before here about not setting up so unique legislation or parts that really restrict using certain feedstock or whatever it might be, that makes it more complicated compared to the rest of the European Commission or European countries. I think that is really key here also, because that can limit availability, it can increase prices and so on, and it doesn't leads us in the right way. So.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and again 60 seconds for answer. Because I've read that in the Lithuania there is promotion of feedstock which can be used for food production, but in the same time there are restrictions for non-food feedstock. What is your position on that, or comments?
Yeah, more that I find it a bit strange, just coming from outside. I don't really understand why there would be that type of difference, and it's not matching what we're seeing in the rest of EU, so it makes it a bit complex for us here. So,
what are potential benefits of making it more flexible?
Yeah, I think that's coming back to what we have said here several times also, that it opens up for more sourcing or using more type of raw materials. We can also be less independent of certain regions when we have crisis like we have seen now in the Ukraine and so on. It helps to be more open.
Okay, thank you very much. Kęstutis, what about you?
I think European Union clearly has, it's very clear, I think, starting from 2015. And by saying that European Union says something clearly, that's already something, because it's not usually that way. But limitation of first generation feedstocks, a limitation and phasing out eventually of palm oil and other, there are certain caps only for food and feed crop. So, and the governments are essentially incentivized to even lower that margin. Now, when we have this current war in Ukraine and food crisis probably caused by it, European Commission again clearly says that the European Commission supports efforts by member states to limit further or even abolish mandates of blending first generation fuels. That's a clear message. That's a clear policy statement. here in Lithuania, well, we've seen actions which I think they are, they want to maximize first generation biofuels. So that's strange. That's just different. And we work in different markets in European Union, and here we have this situation.
You mentioned this situation in Ukraine, yeah. So what the Baltic states could do to increase its dependency on Russia in fossil fuels, and what could be the collaboration between the governments and business companies?
I think, well, at least our company, we have, diversified fully from Russian crude and, products as well. But I think Neste is doing the same or have done that as well, because it's just logistics, it's both Neste, you can comment on Neste, of course, issues yourself, but it's just logistically more convenient because that's the closest, crude supplier that there is. That was the reason why. But now we and most of Europe, we're not buying Russian crude or refined products, irrespective of prices, irrespective of, complications to bring that product, alternative product to Lithuanian market, for example. But there were certain companies, and up to this date there are, which do not have sort of, values or whatever. They don't care. It's a discount. You make a lot of money. And on 100 KT tanker, I think you can win up to 30 million euros just on one, just the price difference. So by adopting universal, ban and embargo on Russian crude, European Union, from the 6 package, if that is adopted, it will really level the playing field, and that's very important.
Okay, Mats, what about you?
Yeah, I think we have a great opportunity right now to sort of review our energy sources and how we source energy, and also look a bit about our future plans here, and looking at how can we become more independent and also have multiple sources and so on. So it's a great time to basically review the energy strategy and look at good solutions where renewable fuels is one of the good solutions, how you can produce more locally and be more independent also.
Yeah, and also some of these sorry to interrupt, some of these feedstocks which are for biofuel production, which are also imported from non-Russian, are of non-Russian origin, that could be viewed also as sort of step towards the right direction in increasing your independence from Russian energy sources. So by limiting here certain availability or eligibility of biofeedstock, it's really counterproductive, I would say.
Okay, thank you. The discussion was so interesting that we are out of the time, but we have still 2 questions, and I think we shouldn't ignore the question from online channel. So it is: do you think that Norway could set the tone for green fuel production? The logic behind it: Norway has abundance of hydropower plants, and continuation of this question. While other countries spend time and energy on the battle nuclear power plants and wind solar energy. Would you like to comment it? Because it's not very close to our topic.
Yeah, but maybe, Norway has been leading in some of the transitions here. It's also been interesting. We got some when we talked about the cost for change. Not all countries have the financial power that Norway have with their oil funds and so on. And it's actually their own audits, the governmental audits said that some of the actions they have taken are really some of the most expensive ways to decarbonize. So I think we can learn from Norway, and they're pushing new technologies and so on. But we can also see what parts make sense. So Norway are saying now they will continue with the very strong electrification for the passenger cars, but for trucks in more remote areas, they actually don't plan to go electric in all those areas. They will choose more for renewable solutions because it's more cost efficient when you're in a country that's so spread out. So I think it's an interesting example where you can learn from both the good stuff and things that could have been made better there also. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question from myself is, summing up our discussion, I would like you to name 1, 2, or 3 factors which could help meeting the decarbonization goal targets for transport in Lithuania? 1, 2, 3 factors or recommendations from your side, and we will deserve a coffee break.
That stuff. Just preliminary, maybe it's bound to change, but I think one is stability, regulatory stability, not only Lithuania, Europe in general. Other is, stability, and I think the third would be also investment stability, because essentially it's absolutely key. You cannot, and I've been participating in discussions where when we are asked why you're not doing that, we just answer because we do not know if it will be available. For example, just not biofuel related topic, but hydrogen topic. How will you decarbonize your hydrogen? We do not know, because technologically you have a choice of carbon capture and storage, and you have also, going fully green electrolysis. Technologically wise, CCU is an option, but regulatory wise, if you look at Fit for 55 package, maybe it's impossible for us to use it because it clearly sets a mandate for green hydrogen for fuel suppliers. So, and now we are waiting for European Commission to make the final decision, political decision, then Lithuania to adopt it into Lithuanian law, and then we can make, a proper investment decision. So how can you decarbonize transport when you do not know which means will be eligible, even though they are available? So.
Thank you. So stability, stability, stability. And what is your point, Mats?
Yeah, stability. I mean, for me, it means also the long-term commitment there. But really, I mean, there are good targets, but it's also how to execute those targets and understanding it does come with a cost, but it also comes with an upside that once you have this in place, you also become more attractive for this company that require certain solutions to have their production here or for the shipments and so on. Also to understand, yes, it comes with a cost, but there also comes with an upside connected to that. So I think those are the key things.
Okay, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was Mats Hultman from Neste and Kęstutis Starkus from Orlen Lietuva. Thank you very much. Thanks. And now we will have coffee break till 3:50. So we will meet here back on 3:50. Enjoy 50. Enjoy the coffee break. So I invite you to take your seats, and we are starting part number 2 of today's conference. And as you know, I'm also university lecturer, and always at the beginning of the classes I do warming up exercise with my students, and I would like to do the warming exercise also with you. So I ask you, think for 10 seconds about your kids. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, think about kids of your brother, sister, etc. 10 seconds. Better about kids, okay? 10 seconds. Okay, so I think you thought about your kids, and why I ask you to do so, because today we are talking about fuels, hydrogen, electromobility, etc., etc., but actually the discussion is not about fuels, but it's about future of our kids, yeah? Because what we are discussing here and what we will do, it will be to build the future for our kids, yeah? So we try to ensure them clear and green environment, healthy life, how they will travel, how they will do business, etc., etc. So please mind that there is also higher purpose behind that what is going on the stage. And now, after this warming up, I think that we could start the official part of second session, and it will start from presentation by Scania Lietuva. Topic is Sustainable Transport in Lithuania, Global Solutions for Local Market, and the presenter and speaker is Dariusz Snieszka, Retail Manager. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello everybody. Very nice beginning of a next round, and you were absolutely correct about this thinking about the kids. So yeah, let's think about the kids, but not probably about the kids, but also about ourselves and what situation do we have, well, globally in Europe, but also in Lithuania. How are we doing here? And actually, this presentation of today's, I will focus a bit more on the sector which is happening in Lithuania. Probably today in the morning or yesterday or every day you are going and you are you are meeting some trucks passing by or you are overtaking some trucks. And just a question to the audience, do you recognize them? Are they new trucks? Are they sustainable or crappy, some almost some broken or no? So I will just shortly briefly describe a situation where we are now, and of course from Scania side provide at least some solutions. How do we think we could decarbonize the transport, not only globally but locally here in Lithuania as well. So what the media is all quite often is saying, and it's not only the media, actually it is true, that when it comes to the transport sector in Lithuania, quite many of us are saying, yeah, we are the leaders. And actually this is absolutely true. If we compare how many trucks, heavy vehicles obtained in Lithuania compared to the other European countries, actually we will be one of the leaders in terms of the capacity of the vehicles, how much Lithuanian haulages are purchasing. Just take a look at this one, at this slide. I mean, that is the amount of vehicles purchased in Lithuania, not only Lithuania, in whole European Union per million inhabitants. The average is roughly 500 vehicles per 1 million inhabitants. Lithuania, 5, even 6 times more compared to the average. Just think about the difference. And why it is that? We'll try to explain you a bit why it is that and what could be the reasons of this. But the main question is, will this be enough? Such amount of vehicles, what we are producing, will this be enough to reduce our CO2 emissions in Lithuania, in the country where we are living, when we are breathing the air, when we and our kids also living. So real situation is here, actually. Almost 8,000 trucks every year is purchased in Lithuania. And that is a huge market, really very, very big market in terms of European Union. 97% out of that, it is the vehicles which are purchased only in one segment, and that is long haulage segment. So what is left in our country, in Lithuania, is roughly 300 vehicles. We call it domestic segment, and that is the segment where you meet every day, where you go to work, where you go back from work. They are probably taking the waste management out of your house or home or something like else. So only 300 vehicles every year is purchased and stays here in Lithuania. Majority of all the others are left from Lithuania, and majority of them are not returning. So actually, we are decarbonizing transport in European Union, and that is good. But what we're doing for ourselves, this is already a question mark. At the same time, in Lithuania, the domestic segment, you can see this. A lot of these vehicles, some of them are taken in real photos, some of them you go to autoplus.lt. From 1991 to 2005, you will see a lot of these vehicles. All of them have one similarity. They are domestic vehicles, they are inside Lithuania, all of them. They're not leaving Lithuania, they're working here, where we are living and working. So how do we reduce this CO2 footprint in the area where we live and work? Do we have any incentives, and do Lithuanian government have any incentives to incentivize these heavy vehicles, to decarbonize them? So just a simple situation or an example. We do have the current support for the passenger vehicles. It is run by the environmental agency, Hvo. So 10 million euros is defined for the juridical or the physical persons. If you buy the electrical vehicle, you get some incentives, and of course you decarbonize the transport. So for 10 million euros, you can buy up to 2,000 vehicles. The passenger vehicles, 500 LCVs, that's in average. And per year, the CO2 reduction, it will be around 8,000 tons. Now imagine if with these 10 million euros, we would put not only to the passenger vehicles, but to the heavy vehicles. That will be only 500 vehicles. And if all these vehicles will run on the alternative fuels, electrification or HVO 100 or biogas, this will save 49,000 tons per year. Does that mean that we now need to change everything into heavy transport? Probably not. But probably here we need also a bit to see or to have some parity. What do we want to achieve by doing the similar programs as this? Do we want to achieve only the scaling of the vehicles, so more vehicles, more electrified vehicles are in our roads, but they are decarbonizing not so much? Or maybe to look at the other segments, because other segments, like for example heavy segment, they are doing 10 to 15 times more mileage than passenger vehicles. So they are decarbonized, they are actually polluting our segment much more than the passenger vehicles. So it depends what you want to do, but probably the truth is somewhere between. Actually, probably we need also to do something in the passenger vehicles, but also not to forget about this heavy transport, which is really polluting our roads. So support of heavy commercial and domestic sustainable transport. Are we really on the right track? So the environmental and energy program, sustainable program, Hvo support efficiency for 2019 and 2021. 2 years we were running on the road. So during these 2 years, no heavy vehicles, sustainable vehicles were purchased. There were some other vehicles purchased, buses and so on, but not a single heavy commercial vehicle was purchased. The heavy commercial vehicles actually in Lithuania were not supported into any other commercial vehicle transport system. So no financial programs at all exist actually. So this is probably why they are not so incentivized and nobody is buying them. Another interesting thing that we have a law of Lithuanian alternative fuels, which is saying that the public procurement shall also obtain the heavy commercial vehicles, which shall be obtained by 2030. They shall run on alternative fuel only 16%. So 16% by 2030. I think Neste was showing their roadmap on the alternative fuels, how many percent they are going to make fuel by that year, by 2030, on alternative background. When it comes to Scania, I mean, by 2030, we will have probably 50% of electrified already vehicles. So are we really aligned with the such laws when it comes to the decarbonization of transport in Lithuania, in the country? And of course, private sector is completely forgotten. So no incentive for private sector. But even with that, will it be enough to shift the roadmap and make the heavy vehicles more attractive and more sustainable? We were already talking about Baltic competition, and today in Lithuania, this is the reality. I mean, if the customer which is buying the vehicle which could run probably on the biogas, or in Lithuania there are only 6 stations. Estonia is far away from us, even Latvia has overtook us. So this is also a bit of the focus where we feel that it's not actually enough it's not only the vehicles, but also the infrastructure which is lagging a bit behind. Electrical trucks, which is maybe some of you can say that this is a bit of the future, somewhere in the future these trucks will be available. But even if it is in the future, I mean, we don't have any single charging station in Lithuania to charge that truck. But I want to say that this is not the future. This is the first electrical already heavy truck delivered to the Baltics, and that was during April. So there are customers who already started to buy these vehicles, but infrastructure is still not in place. So this is a bit also the chicken and egg principle, but again, it will not probably be enough only from the transport buyers to have this vehicle, but also infrastructure has to be in place. Just a reminder, as I mentioned about this public procurement law, which is saying that only 16% of vehicles obtained by public shall be run on alternative fuels. This is Scania electrification roadmap. By 2030, Scania will have almost 50% of the electrified vehicles. So probably in Lithuania, that law shall be adopted a bit to be more optimistic and more positive towards the alternative fuels. And that's not only probably electrification, that can be also alternative fuels as biofuels and so on. And let's not focus only on this electrification. We are a lot of talking about this electrification, electrified vehicles. They exist, but this is still a new vehicles and a new technique. It is not ideal for all applications, but what is probably ideal for all applications, as what was mentioned already in the Neste presentation and the others, that here and now we already have the possible alternatives for the diesel or for the fossil fuels. We have the biogas, we have the HVOs. I mean, and if infrastructure would exist in Lithuania, the vehicles are there, so it is possible to use them, it is possible to buy these vehicles, and they are commercially fully available with the really prices which are very, very close to the prices which we're talking about the diesel truck. So let's not look for this silver bullet, which is maybe will be available in 10 or 5 years with the ideal electrified truck from Scania or from someone else. We can do it now, here and now, with the other solutions. And possible proposals, just several proposals what we think probably should be important for us to highlight in order to decarbonize transport in Lithuania, the heavy transport. Well, first of all is the increase of the, as I mentioned, the law, which we have to push it for the change. So 13% of the decarbonization, that's for sure not enough. Probably should be minimum 50% by 2030. The all public vehicles shall be run alternative fuels. Biomethane and the biogas shall be for sure one of the fuels which shall be prioritized in Lithuania. So far, the vehicles are there. Infrastructure is not completely there, but there are completely no fuel on the market. E-tolling, which is so widely spread in other European countries, so far in Lithuania, whether you buy the most expensive electrical truck or you buy the most polluting diesel truck and go on the Lithuanian roads, you will pay the same amount of money per kilometer. So that's not also probably the fair way to differentiate the alternative transport from all the others. Support for infrastructure for alternative fuels, that is also important, as I mentioned. So we can bring the many different alternative vehicles, but if there will be no infrastructure, it will be really difficult for the customer to go to this vehicle or to charge the vehicle. And sustainable policy requirements probably shall be also important not only to the vehicle manufacturers or the end customers, but the customers. So the whole logistic and purchase chain shall be in line with the same focus, sustainability. So it's not only the vehicle which shall be clean, the fuel which shall be clean, but probably the end product which shall be brought to the shop or to the shopping mall, for example, in the best or the cleanest way. And the last point which we want to highlight, which costs nothing at all for example for Lithuania, just to increase the vehicle length and the vehicle weight, the heavy commercial vehicle length and weight, to make them longer and bigger on the Lithuanian roads. That will not destroy the Lithuanian roads. This is completely different thing, but what it will help, first of all, it will require less commercial vehicles on the road, less drivers on the road, and it will take more goods by one vehicle. So, and that is actually cost almost nothing from the Lithuanian government. So these are the proposals, and what we would like to highlight on the last slide. This is the segment. This is a domestic segment, which is, as I mentioned, only 3%, which is bought from the complete Lithuanian purchase power. It only stays in Lithuania, but this is the segment which we meet every day, which our children meet every day, and probably we here need to focus on it at all in order to be really sustainable on the commercial segment, on the construction segment, distribution segment, waste management segment, public transport segment, anything. So let's focus on this. This is our solution. Thank you.
Yes. Please stay with us, and I have a question to the audience. Are we taking plan A or B? Do you have questions, or I should use my plan B? Any questions?
I have one question.
Okay, please go.
I was a bit surprised. Yeah, domestic percentage was only 3%, and the heavy vehicles, you said that everything is taken out from Lithuania, right? So, but why? Is it because, of course, I believe it's the high price. And is there any subsidies from Lithuanian government for the private sector to buy heavy vehicles? Do you know?
As I mentioned, there are no subsidies for the private sector, for the companies to buy a vehicle, and those segments or subsidies which are in place or which were in place from, for example, UPVA governmental organizations. So 2 years in a row, none of the vehicles were bought. So the conditions were so difficult to reach, or not, how to say, not made on a sustainable way. So nobody has applied. Now, why all these vehicles? Not all these vehicles are leaving, but majority of vehicles for sure are leaving country, and we are not returning here. Well, this is of course the Lithuanian geographical situation. So we are on a bit on the edge or on the final part of the Europe and Eastern and Western Europe. So actually, majority of vehicles are going out and working basically in Germany, in the Benelux countries, so in Western Europe. This is where the business is. This is where the production is. This is where people need to travel and transport goods from point A to point B. We have also some production in Lithuania, but it's not so much. So and this is why actually probably so many vehicles are leaving. So what are left is the vehicles which are working in Lithuania, or some of them are returning. Sometimes they are returning from Europe to Lithuania and then going back, import and export. But it's really majority. But even if that, how to say, if we say that Lithuania is a bit on the edge of the geographically, there is even the difference between the Baltic states. For example, Estonia, the smaller country, the smaller amount of vehicles obtained, but the domestic segment in Estonia is 40 to 50%. Latvia, the country in the middle, the domestic segment is 20-25%. So I would say it is a bit forgotten segment, and it's not incentivized at all here in Lithuania. So we are a bit forgetting how are we living here, but we are providing everything outside of Lithuania.
Any other questions? Please.
Yes, I had one question and idea relating to the previous presentations. If companies would start assessment of their emission through the whole production, for example, from the goods or raw material come and to the final product, so maybe it's a question not only because of government. If the company in Lithuania would count how much emission it has and subcontract more clean companies or subcontractor, maybe it would be raise demand from private sector.
Probably that might very well happen, but I would say it is still. I mean, in the end, this is the customer who pays the money, and that is important. And if we take a look at and compare the electrified vehicle, electrified truck with the diesel truck, of course the initial price is really huge, at least at the moment, because that's completely new product. But that's the investments for the first year, or the initial investments. If we take a look at 10 years perspective, and probably that truck might be used sometimes even more than 10 years, this might be completely different. Okay, electricity price compared to diesel price, now it's a bit difficult to compare because we are now fluctuating, but the repair and maintenance cost for the electrified truck is way down more than compared to the conventional diesel, for example, truck. So in a way, it's the longer period the truck can run, the parity between the electrified truck and the diesel truck will get closer and closer. But that's only electrification. We're talking about some other fuels and HVOs and biodiesels, biofuels. And with these fuels, you can achieve the decarbonizing of the transport here and now. What we are missing here inside Lithuania is actually the infrastructure and the fuels itself, which can be fueled for the trucks. If those will appear, the market for sure, especially domestic market, can be decarbonized at much faster pace.
I'm sorry we have stopped here and go to the next speaker. Thank you very much for this presentation. And we go very quickly to the next speaker, but short story before it, because sometimes I'm driving with my father to Vienna, to Berlin by car, and we are meeting the cars of trucks of Girteka on the street, and I say to my father, they are great, and my father, they are Lithuanian. So this is, I would say, flag brand of Lithuania. It's recognized in Europe. So it's really great that we will have opportunity to listen to the presentation. So I invite to the stage Andrejs Petrovs, Sales and Business Development Director at Girteka Europe. The topic of the presentation is Steps Towards Sustainable Future, Girteka's Experience. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Hello, do you hear me well? First of all, I wanted to touch on the topic which you mentioned about the children, that we need to take 10 seconds and think about the children. So, as I have a newborn baby at home, I was spending much more longer time this night. So if I will be forgetting some words, forgive me, that's because I was thinking about future and children. So a few words about myself. My name is Andrejs. I am originally from Latvia, but I'm enjoying life in Vilnius for almost 3 years already. I'm about 15 years in the industry, being at different moments on a different sides of a table, on the customer side or on the service provider side, and today I'm happy to share our green journey, so what we do for the sustainable future and for lowering the emissions and what's our actions, what we do. So first of all, as it was already mentioned, as all the European Union, as all the European community, we are having very ambitious plan to reduce the emission by 90%. It is of course for the whole industry, not only for the trucking, and I would say that trucking is only limited for about 30% due to our calculations, how much we could decrease the emission. But of course it is an important topic for everybody, and as it was mentioned already earlier today, it's a lot about partnership and how we are doing it all together. If we speak exactly of Girteka Logistics, of course, majority of the improvement we see could come from the usage of the fuel. It could be different types of the fuel. It could be HVO, it could be gas, it could be electricity. So it is many different solutions which market is currently evaluating and thinking how to implement. But it is not only limited to it. Quite a big part is still in usage of the fleet, what the previous speaker also touched on, about the quality of the fleet, about the age of the fleet, about the Euro 6, which is now already on the market, about the plans to have Euro 7 very soon on the market, so we're expecting in 2025, and that would be another game changer, which could give a lot of impact, and actually nobody really understanding right now how it will look like. So it's again big uncertainty, big challenge, and a big opportunity for the companies who will invest in it. Currently we are using only Euro 6 trucks, so that's why we are already taking the advantage of reducing our emission and the fuel consumption in Europe, and on top of it we are doing really big steps on improving the efficiency of using of these new trucks, because it is very advanced from the technological standpoint machineries which need to be used in the proper way. So that's why also very important to invest into people who would be able to operate correctly the equipment which they are using. This is one, but not the only way how we can influence. Another very important topic which we really try to invest is usage of the intermodal solutions within Europe, because in average, if we compare intermodal way of transportation to the regular one, it is reducing the fuel consumption and emission for approximately 90%. So that's why we really make huge steps. So if we compare 2020 to 21, we increased almost double for 95% and made another 50% during this year comparing to previous one. We're planning to close this year with about 50% still growth. So this is also the huge opportunity, and the European Union is investing a lot into the infrastructure. Every year we are getting new lanes for the train connections, for the ferry connections, which are really making European countries much more integrated from the perspective of the intermodal logistics. So that's also very, very interesting and very perspective topic, which is not 100% utilized from the standpoint of potential which it has. Few words about how it is solved internally, because we talked a lot today about external factors, so the fuel which we are using, the trucks which we are using, the roads, the countries, everything, but we were not touching very important topic is internal room of improvement which each company have, because for example in Gerteco Logistics we are operating 9,000 trucks in the whole Europe. It means that we are shipping about 3,000 full truckloads every day. Each truck have about 200 possible actions which could influence this truck every day. So if we multiply all this amount, we're coming to 1.8 million actions which could happen to our fleet daily. And here it is extremely important how to work with this information correctly, using artificial intelligence, strong ERP systems, automated planning support, and other tools in order to use the fleet in an efficient way. Because only by this, the reduction of CO2 emission could be really comparable to what we possibly could get from using of alternative energy sources, like this kind of diesel or electricity or something else. So that's also worth to mention that a lot is actually in our hands, in the hands of organizations, and in hands how efficient they are operating the tools and the equipment they are using daily. Now we have different solutions available on the market. All of them are on different stages of development. So we see Hvo already presented in the market, and we are actually one of the users of the Hvo diesel. So we are operating for few of our customers, mostly in Germany, and we really see the great potential. But as it was mentioned, we are also very limited from the standpoint of infrastructure, because it is very limited currently, and you could speak about using the Hvo fuel only from the standpoint of particular projects, but not from the scale of the big and international business within the Europe. Unfortunately, this is the reality which we see now, and we really hope that investments will be done more into the infrastructure, and we will be able to offer it to more customers with comparatively lower expenditures related to availability of the fueling stations and the product itself. Also, we are really waiting for the hydrogen to come. We're really following it very closely, because some companies already starting the experiments, and nobody yet know how it will influence the market. So we are very curious and really looking forward to be to be the first to try when it will be available, and when we will see how we can use it and how we can serve our customers using the hydrogen trucks. Also, it was mentioned already before that different on the same moment we are in the one industry, but industry itself is very segmented, and each segment is very different from another. If we are taking the national transportations, they are more ready and more prepared for using of alternative ways of fuel, electricity, HVO, and others. But the more we are going to the long haul and international transport, the more still we are dependent on the infrastructure, which is not limited by borders of one country. So that's why we expect that this process, of course, for our particular segment will take comparatively longer time, and we are not expecting this to come tomorrow, but we are absolutely sure that big part of our segment as well will move towards alternative sources of energy and alternative ways of the fuel which will be used. So that's why we are really looking forward. We do not see it as a threat. We really see it as a great opportunity, because the companies who will be well prepared and well designed in order to allow themselves to use alternative ways of energy, alternative ways of fuel, will really get the competitive advantage. So that's why we are really looking forward to future and very curious how this future will look like. Right now, we very actively working with our partners, with our truck suppliers, in order to monitor the tendencies of the market. And as I mentioned already, so now there is a lot of thoughts about Euro 7, but at the same time we are closely monitoring what are the news and what are the inventions in battery electricity, in HVO, in using the gas in the truck. So because in our long-term strategy, we see that on a longer distance, we will have more and more trucks which would be replaced from ordinary and standard diesel consuming trucks to alternative sources. That's it. I would be happy to answer your questions. I tried to be short and precise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? I allow one question and 30 seconds for answer, okay?
I will try. Thank you.
So where do you buy HVO? You mentioned you use it for customers operating in Germany.
In Germany, yes.
So from where? From the Netherlands, or do you fuel up in Lithuania?
In Germany.
In Germany.
In Germany, yes.
And who is the provider, the seller of HVO in Germany?
I believe it should be Neste.
Nice.
Or maybe it is Netherlands. Maybe you're right.
Okay, so I allow another question. Any other? If not, we will move the questions from the audience to the panel discussion, if it's fine for you. And I invite now the members of the panel. So first, Ms. Agnie Wojciukiewicz-Jute, Vice Minister of Transport and Communication. Hello. Next is Mr. Dariusz Śnieżka, Scania Lietuva. Nicolas Kiaer, Volvo Group Lietuva. And Andries Petrov, Girteka Europe. Hello. Hello. So we are starting quickly. Because the audience is diversified, it's qualified audience, but both online and here inside is diversified. So I would start from question to you, Madam Minister, to provide some intro to the situation in Lithuania so everyone could get the common ground. And the question is, what is the role of your ministry for decarbonization of transport, and how you shape the environment for decarbonizing? It doesn't. Please try.
Oh,
Okay.
now it's okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry that I came here just in the afternoon. I could not attend for the bigger part of the discussion today, but I was lucky to hear several very interesting insights from the market leaders, and it was really, really interesting. We work on the government side, also on all those issues and all those challenges from the decarbonization side and from the capabilities from the market side and which way to go. So coming back to your question, as a Deputy Minister of Transport and Communications, we do have a lot. We work a lot with the Green Deal initiatives and with everything actually. As you know, Lithuania has like 30% of all pollution comes from transport sector, which is even higher than the average in Europe, which is 25%. So we have a lot of challenges. We do, of course, have different investment plans, how to change, and we discuss a lot on European level on the directives such as AFIR, and I think all of you heard those magic word Fit for 55. So it's a very ambitious plan for the whole Europe, and Lithuania is also a part of this plan. So on Lithuanian level, we do have very ambitious plans with several milestones for 2025, for 2030, and for 2050. Which is the main goal for whole Europe for Fit for 55 plan to have a totally decarbonized continent. So in Lithuania now, what we are working a lot on European level, we're trying to figure out with other European countries on a third directive, which basically makes all the requirements for a standardization of the development of the whole infrastructure, if it's electric infrastructure or hydrogen infrastructure or any kind of infrastructure. So basically countries needs to decide on the parameters that, because we don't need only infrastructure, we need a very sustainable network, European network, that all the infrastructure would be suitable to each other, that it would be customer-friendly system and so on. So there's a lot of issues going on because on the other side, the government is planning at the same time, even if the whole Europe is not agreed on some such parameters, we do have very important law. It's our alternative law, alternative fuel law, which is basically even at some points more restricted and more ambitious than the plans in Europe. And we're trying to figure out how we will fulfill those milestones ahead. The biggest challenge, as always and everywhere, is money. There's always not enough of investments because the challenge is huge. And even if we do have some added sources like RRF funds, which we have more than 250 million dedicated for Green Deal initiatives, public transport, electric cars, infrastructure, and so on. And together with the European investments, it's just not enough because what we count the gap is around 3 billion euros. But what we're doing now together with the panel gentlemen here, I think that in the first part of this discussion, you had a meeting, you had an opportunity to meet the Deputy Minister of Environment.
She missed the plan.
She missed the plan. So I will introduce what we are doing together with the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Transport and Communications. So we revising National Energy and Climate Plan. at the moment, and this is a very, very important process because we're trying to adjust to our ambitious goals, the plans and the tools, measures, for that reason we created 5 main decarbonization groups, and one of the group is definitely dedicated for transport, and we do have several subgroups there dedicated for different type of vehicles and different type of issues. And we are now at the stage when we gathered and we discussed it, and we were the first, actually, transport decarbonization group was the first finished with all the stakeholders, the discussions on the measures, tools necessary, to make this huge change. So we are at the stage when all the wishes and ambitions and all the stakeholders, businesses had an opportunity to suggest something, and now we are evaluating all the measures, and that process will go on, and obviously all the stakeholders will be a huge part of it. So that would be, sorry, a long, short introduction for
So
now. Thank you.
when this legislation will be ready? Are you able to say when it will be ready?
So our national legislation is already in place. When we are talking about AFIR, well, there is a huge debate still on some countries. But we obviously, and the whole Europe and European Commission is trying to push it as hard as possible. And I'm not sure when we will kind of figure out the final document version, but what I wanted to explain that all the planning, even if the directive is not giving strict rules how we will work for the next 10 years in Europe, is not in place, we're still planning all the finances, we're trying to do everything at the same time, and that's what all the countries are doing. So that's where the challenge is as well.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question to you, because in the first part of your intervention you used word investments, and I realized that people got excited in the audience. So could you reveal what investments you meant?
As I mentioned, we do have ambitious goals, and because of that, obviously, the majority of RRF package was dedicated, for Green Deal initiatives as well. But not only RRF investments, but European investments as well. And we just got a huge investment from the Modernization Fund to support new electric cars, to support subsidies for new electric cars. So this is one way to go. Obviously, we will dedicate a huge portion of investments to the public transport, which is very polluting at the moment in Lithuania. I think more than 87% of whole public transport is run by diesel as well. So, and this is a huge problem. So there will be a huge portion dedicated for that, and a lot of dedication will go for infrastructure.
I see. Thank you very much. And question to the gentleman. What, in your opinion, needs special attention in this process towards decarbonizing of transport in Lithuania? What needs special attention, please, Volvo?
From Volvo's side, I think it's awareness in the market. It's awareness by all consumers that we actually, where we are in the transport sector and what we can do. I think many are thinking about electrical cars and etc., but they seldom think about how are my product in a supermarket transported. I think the consumers can move that in the right direction, and of course also politicians, because we are measuring a lot of CO2 output, but we are not really taxating the difference, and I think that is a big step. And as we have heard before, us from the industry, we can deliver fully electrical trucks, fully electrical buses. And also good solutions with alternative fuels.
Okay, thank you. What about Scania?
Hello? Yeah. So yes, awareness. I fully agree on this. I would say 2 points which also has been mentioned in the presentation. So the awareness of the customers, all customers shall be on the same boat. So customer is aware that that, as you mentioned, the goods shall be transported on the most sustainable way. So it's not only the transport vehicle or the buyer of the vehicle who is transporting it, but the good, how to transport it. So that is important thing. And I would say, once again, electrified vehicles, they are on the market. The new product, yes, hydrogen, it will appear in the future, but in order to probably reach the decarbonization plans here and now, let's use the possibilities what are available in the market now, and that is the renewable fuels which are available, and the vehicles are also available.
Thank you. Kirteka.
Yeah. Hello. I would say that that's okay. I would say that the most critical here is two things. It is information and infrastructure. So first of all, awareness of people is comparatively low about the alternatives, about the impact, and about potential improvements which we could get by using alternative source of energy. Because as it was very correctly mentioned by other speakers, that finally it is customer and final consumer who are making the choice of buying the product which was or delivered or produced or sold using alternative energy. So we really need to put a lot of effort on explaining final consumers what are the advantages of that model. And of course, what I mentioned quite detailed in the presentation, it's an infrastructure, because we could invent many different things, but it would start being efficient when we're speaking about scale and mass production. And this is the game changer, and this is very crucial and base thing which we need all to invest and to focus on.
Thank you. Madam Minister, would you like to comment this? Or?
Of course.
Please.
As I say, it's my job to speak all the time with all the groups, and business is a huge partner in deciding on how Lithuania will go forward for the next 10 years as well. So I totally agree with the panelists. I think that from the business side and at the end of the day, we will make that change when all the consumers and people on many levels will decide or understand the reason why we're doing that. But I think that we have a very long way to go, and there should be all of the efforts from national government, from municipalities, and from businesses together. And I totally agree with an idea that infrastructure is a key here, because whenever we're speaking about alternatives and that we want to push the alternatives, and this is, one small stone to my side, because we're also working very hardly to push infrastructure on the, high level in Lithuania as well. And we're planning this year to start the infrastructure, and I think next week we will represent our national electric infrastructure development plan from now till 2030. And this is not just a plan, it's a very dynamic, will be publicly available. You'll see what we have right now in any place in Lithuania. You'll see what the municipalities are planning. You'll see what are the national plans and the requirements we need to fulfill. So I do believe that infrastructure here is a key. And in between this period, there is where the government should come in and try to figure out how to help, I would say, how to help businesses, how to help, public public institutions and everyone to fill the gap. Because I want to encourage everyone to buy electric car or to, use alternative fuels. But if there is no infrastructure yet publicly available, then we need to figure out, how to fill the gap and how to attract the ones who will still would like to drive a car right now. So there where the subsidies are coming, there where all the education initiatives, all the taxes possibly coming for pollution taxes and all the other stuff, which is making a huge complex, which kind of guides us towards those future goals. So I would say infrastructure is very important in the sense, and I'm not talking about electric infrastructure. Whenever we're talking about hydrogen, we also do have plants and dedicated resources. But whenever we're talking about infrastructure in hydrogen case, where the technology is not yet there, we are still waiting, for the whole ecosystem to catch up. Because who will be those who will use that infrastructure? So there is a lot of R&D, and the innovations challenges here too. And what I saw, and this is where I would let myself not to agree fully with the colleagues, that I totally agree that we need to take what we have right now in the market. But from the government perspective, we want, and that's what I'm telling on European level always, and Lithuania wants to be and have that technological neutrality and try to kind of develop or encourage all the technologies. Because last year when I was in Munich, and I was in the biggest future mobility, I think, conference where all the huge car producers were there. We had a lot of discussions, but some of them were going on one direction, some of them were going on the other direction. But I saw that there is a potential for all of those directions. And from the government perspective, and that's what all the governments are doing, we're trying to encourage, all the innovations in the sector. And obviously because for heavy-duty vehicles there are one solutions, for light-duty vehicles there are other type of solutions, and there could be a lot of in between. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
One quick question, because you mentioned education. Do you see any room for collaboration with companies in this education process, educating the market?
Of course. I think that we work with the industry very closely here. Obviously, sometimes we do agree on something, sometimes we don't, which is normal, and that's how it should be. But I think that we are on the same boat.
Okay, thank you. So on the way to decarbonizing transport, there is this golden triangle. So regulation, incentives, infrastructure. Yeah, we discussed about infrastructure. So now there is time for incentives. Yeah. So what incentives government is planning to offer? And it's question to you and question to the other panelists. What incentives you would expect?
Shall I start?
So maybe we will start from business this time.
Okay. I think, first of all, it's very important. I think we also learned that today, and the minister also mentioned it. It's very difficult to focus and say this is the solution for the future. And it's very important that we in the industry and politicians are neutral here. That the sources of energy has to be neutral. And if it's because we want to reduce CO2, we have to have incentive for reducing CO2. That must be the solution. If it's CO2 we want to reduce, if it's particles in the city and etc., we have to give some reasons for going that direction. So that is our approach to the politicians, to the consumers.
Okay, thank you, Girtaka.
I would say that our position here is dictated on our role, and we are the service providers. So we are providing the services to our customers, and we as business need to be ready to offer to the customers the solutions that they will find the most efficient and on the same time the most nature friendly or sustainable, depending on the strategy of the customer. So that's why I would say in this situation, not we are leading the choice, but we should be ready to work with any choice which customer will decide they really need. And this really depends on the factors which you mentioned before about the taxations, maybe some subsidiaries or some quotas for the CO2 emissions, but it is more on the customer side. And as a service provider, we need to be up to date, ready, and being in a good shape to make it if customers will request it. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you. What about Scania?
We were so comfortably sitting on the, for the decades, on the actually one and only solution, or maybe two solutions, the petrol and diesel. And that's it. We didn't even thought about that there might be any other solution. So probably this time of change now, what it is happening now, probably we shall be prepared that there will not be only one solution. So the customer will be able to choose out of several solutions. And during this transition period, some of the solutions will be costly, or we see that they are costly. If, well, we just take electrical vehicle. Now to obtain the electrical vehicle is, if you take about a truck, it's probably twice more expensive than the diesel truck. So during this transition period, probably this is what the business is looking from the political partners, at least for the transition, to help incentivize the ones who are starting the business, who are the frontliners of the really big change of the game.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, and Madam Minister.
So, from our perspective, I totally agree that firstly we're trying to be neutral in the sense, and in Lithuania we're trying to help to, and that there are some European requirements that we need to have, the network or it's electric or hydrogen, that there should be a network on European level. So these initiatives somehow guides our policies as well. And of course, I do see, and we do see, the huge challenge because of geopolitical situation, because of energy prices, which touched all sectors, everyone. And there are two philosophical kind of ways to look to it. One is that we need to move forward even faster, just to become more energy independent, just to have different sources, different technologies, options. And the other one is obviously also real, that the prices are going up crazy. All the supply chains, even if you want to order, electric car, truck, bus, you need to wait for a very long time. And on European terms, when all the countries are trying, to use all the, new European period money together with RRF up on that, all the money to kind of make a huge change on their transport or, all the systems and to change CO2 emissions, you see that we will have huge challenges. But the problem is that it's challenging not only for, business leaders who are trying to do so, but just imagine how it's challenging for, public sector or for, schools, municipalities, because they still, buying all the buses, everything from the market. And the prices now are huge. And we still do have all the requirements and procurement procedures stricken now, that all the new investments into public transport, for example, would be only used for electric or alternative fuel run transport. So this is a law in Lithuania, and this will become a challenge when we will be ready to invest. And I think that at this point it's really hard to say at what extent and how we can support the business which are trying, to be the leader and to help to make this shift faster, because we're still working on, I mentioned the decarbonization plan. And I think that all the suggestions were made there as well. And all the possible subsidies or ideas how, where, on which part the support could become was obviously given from the businesses as well. So I think we will still discuss on how we can make this change and how the business can find themselves and not only pressured to make a change, but also to feel that there is a support from the government as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And question to Nicholas. You are advocate of holistic view over the all value chain. Could you elaborate what you mean and why it's so important?
I can answer on the Volvo perspective how we are thinking, because it's not only about the products we are delivering, it's also how we are driving the workshops in Lithuania. We have 4 truck workshops where we are buying 100% green electricity. We are investing this year in solar panels. We are saving lights in our workshops and offices, heating and finding new intelligent systems. We are using renewable things in our trucks. So we had it also on the agenda today about renewable plastic. We are not an exclusion from that. We are doing that as well. So I think if we need to reach our goals, and we have all ambitious goals in Europe and also in Lithuania, we need to look at all small things we can do. And there are many things we can do, and we shall not forget one part of it. And when it comes to transport and delivering solutions for transport, it's important that we all are aware of that there are electrical trucks, there are alternative fuels, there are hydrogen for the future, there are biogas, and we need to keep a grab on all of those solutions and not only focus on one.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, because one of the key conclusions of the previous panel session was that the business needs stability of regulation and legal environment. So the question for the business here is, do you expect the same? Is it important to you? And to the Vice Minister, the question is, are we ready to ensure the stability of future regulation? Okay, so we start from the business again. Please, Kirteka.
I would say that, of course, predictability is very critical for the business, but I would not say that we're having any major issues right now, because I believe our regulation in this field is quite transparent, and I would say it is also almost centralized in all the European countries. So probably we should be aware and following the overall trend and the overall timeline of moving to the new model of building the supply chain, because as we have seen on the example of personal cars, how quick the transformation happened from being something very exclusive and very extraordinary to being absolutely ordinary part of our life. So nobody today is surprised looking on the electric car on the road. But I remember myself, even 4 years ago, being in Oslo, I was shocked by the quantity of the electric cars driving there. And now we are on the same level. And it is just few years. And I believe with long distance haulage and with heavy trucks, it could be very similar, that the change will come much faster than we are expecting. And we should just be sure that we will be on the front line, because we have all in hand and we are ready from the business perspective. And I hope also we will get the support from the government institutions.
Thank you. And kind request to the other speakers for short interventions, 30 seconds, okay? So Scania, please.
Okay, but when it comes to the stability, what kind of stability are you talking about?
Of regulation.
Okay, of regulation. But I mean, in general, I mean, stability. When last time we saw the stability, this is a new reality, I think, and we shall be prepared for. I mean, probably the logistic chain breakage and leakage, that is a bit of the question part, and for the producers it is a warning sign. If that will stabilize, I think everything will be really okay. When it comes to the electrified vehicles, absolutely, you're absolutely right. This will be so fast and and quick change as it was with the passenger cars. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you very much, Hvo.
Yeah, I think actually legislation-wise we are on the right track. There are coming in 2 years from now longer trucks, so we can have better aerodynamic extra weight for electrical trucks, and we should simply just continue together to work for a better future for our children.
Well, I think all these gentlemen just said everything I wanted to say. So very shortly, well, I do believe that the future is very bright, especially in Lithuania. I see our GDP. I see how strong economy is here in Lithuania. I see that there is a lot of Lithuanian businesses that are very international. I see that international businesses wants to be present here in Lithuania and see the market. So I think that the regulatory environment here is definitely good enough. But as a colleague from Geartech has said, it's really important to understand that now what we are trying to figure out is on the European level. So whenever we'll agree on, all of us agree on the directives and all the requirements that needs to be fulfilled on European level, then I think that we'll move really fast.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And final message from each of you. And the question, time for answer is 30 seconds, okay? If you are fine with it. And the question is like in the first panel. So if you were to name 1, 2, or 3 factors which are crucial for successful decarbonization of Lithuanian transport sector, what would it be? We will start maybe from Minister this time.
I would say the partnership between national on the national level together with the businesses. This is very crucial to be very close to each other, because on the business side there is all the R&D, innovations, new ideas, understanding really fast of what's going on in the neighboring countries, all the solutions. On our side, I would still highlight infrastructure. And dedication to do all the infrastructure as fast as possible, but once again, without business, we will not move anywhere at all. So we will need a lot of, on business side here as well. So that would be 2 main points for us. And obviously, we should be a realist. There will always not be enough of, investments. So how we can make, how we can multiply the effect is by working very closely together and trying to, and trusting in each other. This is really important.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Yeah, first of all, what we started here, awareness about where we are and where we want to go, and together go in that direction. Infrastructure, absolutely electrical trucks, they need electricity. And with Neste, develop tank stations. And then I see a bright future if we all go together.
Thank you, Darius.
Absolutely, infrastructure. So I'm for this, and the inclusion of the all social and business partners into the working groups, and that is what is done actually from the transport ministry and from other ministries with Mission Zero Decarbonization group. That is, I think, perfect platform for the sharing the ideas and solutions.
Thank you very much. And Andres.
I would absolutely agree that it's very crucial to have all the European countries working in a very close partnership and cooperation on building the needed infrastructure. This is the key and the base.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it was panel of Ms. Agnie Wajciukiewicz, Vice Minister of Transport and Communication. Dariusz Snieżka, Scania Lietuva. Nicolas Kjaer, Volvo Group Lietuva. And Andrejs Petros, Geartech Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And to the audience, thank you for staying for us. I will try to summarize the event, which was really great, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere of event here. So what we could say after these two panel sessions and some presentations. So what is important, this golden triangle that was mentioned, which is regulation, and conclusion from panel number 1 was stable regulation. In panel second, it was not so, it seemed to be not so important. So regulation, incentives to the business, and infrastructure. Yeah, we also concluded, especially in panel number 1, that the effective dialogue with stakeholders is important, so everyone could contribute to the discussion to work out optimal solution. There was also, in my opinion, very good contribution that the trust between parties is really important. So now we have homework. We simply have to implement in the life what we were discussing today. So thank you very much for coming and enjoy the evening.